Story 1. At exactly 6:12 a.m., a dog walker named Erin Walsh noticed something strange about the house on Briar Hollow Road. The curtains were open. They had never been opened before. For nearly 11 months, the two-story colonial at the end of the cul-de-sac had stood empty. A for sale sign leaned crooked in the yard, weather-beaten and ignored. The grass was trimmed by a landscaping service. The mailbox remained locked. No lights, no movement, just silence. Until that morning, Erin slowed as her Labrador pulled toward the driveway. She told herself it was nothing. Maybe the realtor had come by. Maybe the property had finally sold. But as she looked closer, she felt a cold, creeping unease. The front door was slightly ajar. Not wide open. Just enough. As if someone had stepped out and forgotten to close it. Erin stepped back instinctively and fumbled for her phone. By 6:19 a.m., police dispatch had logged the call. By 6:26, patrol cars were on scene. And by 6:34, the quiet, unsold house on Briar Hollow Road would no longer be just another stale listing. It would become a crime scene. Detective Lena Mao arrived just after 7. She had worked homicides in Briar County for 12 years. She'd seen domestic violence, robberies gone wrong, overdoses, jealous lovers, and carefully staged accidents. But as she stepped onto the porch of 114, Briar Hollow Road, she felt something different. Stillness. The kind that feels intentional. A uniformed officer met her at the door. "Back bedroom," he said quietly. Lena nodded and slipped on gloves. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cleaning solution. Not rut. Not decay. Clean. Too clean. The living room was staged like a real estate brochure. Neutral sofa. Decorative throw pillows. Empty bookshelves. But the air felt heavy. Down the hallway, the master bedroom door stood open. And on the floor, a man lay on his back. Mid-30s. Well-dressed. Shoes still on. A single, precise gunshot wound to the forehead. No sign of struggle. No overturned furniture. No defensive wounds. Lena crouched beside the body. ID. Officer Grant checked his notepad. Wallet in his pocket. Name's Daniel Mercer. Lena froze for half a second. Not the sheriff from her last case. A different Daniel Mercer. 38 years old. Financial consultant. Address listed in the neighboring city. What was he doing here? She murmured. Grant shrugged. No vehicle in the driveway. Time of death. ME estimates between midnight and 2 a.m. Lena scanned the room carefully. The bed was made. The closet empty. No personal belongings. The house was staged, which meant Daniel Mercer did not live here. He had come here, and someone had been waiting. The first strange detail emerged within the hour. The real estate agent assigned to the property, Monica Dale, arrived pale and shaken. "I haven't shown this house in weeks," she insisted. "No scheduled viewings. The owners moved out last year after their divorce. It's been vacant." "Who has access?" Lena asked. "Just me. And the listing office. We keep a lockbox on the front door." Lena stepped outside. The lockbox was intact. No signs of forced entry. Which meant either Daniel Mercer had the code, or someone inside had let him in. But there was no one else inside. Crime scene text dusted surfaces. No signs of break-in. No fingerprints besides Mercer's and Monica's. No weapon recovered. The bullet had exited cleanly and lodged in drywall. A suppressor had likely been used. No neighbors reported hearing a shot. It was quiet. Controlled. Professional. By noon, Lena sat in an interrogation room across from Monica Dale. "You're sure you didn't schedule a late showing?" Lena asked. "I would never," Monica said, her voice trembling. "Especially not at midnight. Has anyone expressed unusual interest in the property?" Monica hesitated. "There was one call last week." Lena leaned forward. "From who?" "A man. Didn't give a name. Asked very specific questions." "Like what?" "He wanted to know if the security cameras were active." Lena's eyes sharpened. "Security cameras." Monica nodded. "The previous owners installed a system before they moved out. It's inactive now, but the hardware's still there." Lena stood immediately. "Show me." In the hallway closet, tucked behind a breaker panel, was the old camera hub. Dust-covered. Disconnected. Or so it appeared. Lena knelt and examined the wiring. One cable looked newer, recently replaced. She followed it with her eyes. It ran through the wall, toward the master bedroom. "Get tech in here," she said quietly. Minutes later, a forensic specialist carefully removed the wall panel near the bedroom ceiling. Behind it, a small, modern camera. Active. Recording. The room fell silent. "Someone's been watching this house," Grant muttered. Lena's stomach tightened. Daniel Mercer hadn't just come to the house. He had been expected and recorded. Back at the station, they traced Daniel Mercer's background. Clean record. No criminal history. High-income financial consultant specializing in corporate restructuring. Recently divorced. No known connection to Briar Hollow Road. Except one thing. 6 months earlier, he had handled financial liquidation for a property development firm. The same firm that had previously owned 114 Briar Hollow Road. Lena leaned back in her chair. So he worked with the company that used to own this house. Grant nodded. And that company filed for bankruptcy 3 months ago. Executives scattered. One moved overseas. One retired. One. He stopped. One what? One committed suicide last month. Lena stared at him. How? Gunshot wound. The room felt smaller. Same caliber, she asked. Grant checked the report. Yes. By evening, Tex had extracted partial footage from the hidden camera. The timestamp read 12:17 a.m. The bedroom door opened. Daniel Mercer stepped inside cautiously. He looked nervous, as if he expected someone. He checked his phone. Waited. 2 minutes later, a shadow moved behind him. From the hallway, the footage glitched briefly. Then Daniel stiffened, as if hearing something. He turned. The screen froze. Then cut. When playback resumed, Daniel was on the floor. Already dead. No shooter visible. Lena stared at the screen. They knew about the camera, she whispered. They edited it, or accessed it remotely. Grant frowned. Why record at all? Lena considered that, if you plan a murder, you don't install a camera in advance. Unless, the camera wasn't for the killer. It was for someone else. At 9:42 p.m., Lena received a call. Unknown number. She answered. Silence. Then, a voice, calm and measured. You're looking in the wrong direction, detective. Her grip tightened. Who is this? You think this is about a house? A faint click, like someone adjusting a headset. It's about what was buried under it. Lena's pulse spiked. Buried. You should check the foundation. The line went dead. She stared at her phone. Grant looked at her. What was that? Lena stood. Get a warrant. For what? She met his eyes. To dig. At midnight, floodlights illuminated the backyard of 114 Briar Hollow Road. Crime scene tape fluttered in the breeze. A ground-penetrating radar unit scanned the soil near the back patio. A technician watched the monitor. Detective, he said slowly. There's a disturbance. Human. Too early to say. Lena folded her arms. Start digging. Shovels broke earth. 6 inches. 12. 18. Then, a hollow sound. Wood. The team cleared dirt carefully. A rectangular shape emerged. A crate. Old. Weathered. Nailed shut. Lena felt her heartbeat in her throat. Open it. The lid came loose with a creak. Inside, plastic sheeting. Wrapped tight. Grant swallowed. Please don't be. It was. Human remains. But not recent. Bones. Clothing fragments. A wallet. Lena carefully retrieved it. Inside, a driver's license. Name, Thomas Hale. Reported missing. 9 years ago. The quiet house on Briar Hollow Road had never truly been empty. And Daniel Mercer hadn't been the first man connected to it to die from a gunshot wound. As floodlights cast long shadows across the yard, Lena felt the shape of something much larger beginning to form. This wasn't a random meeting gone wrong. This wasn't a simple execution. This house was a secret, and someone had just killed to keep it that way. The question was, who was watching now, and how many more bodies were buried beneath the surface? By 2:13 a.m., the backyard of 114 Briar Hollow Road looked like an archaeological site. Floodlights cast harsh white beams over the excavation pit. The plastic-wrapped remains had been carefully transferred into an evidence container, but the open crate still sat exposed in the dirt, a dark rectangle carved into earth that had hidden a secret for nearly a decade. Detective Lena Ma stood at the edge of the hole, staring down. Thomas Hale. Missing 9 years. Buried under a house that had since changed ownership twice. And tonight, another man connected to that property lay in the morgue with a bullet in his skull. 2 gunshots. Officer Grant muttered beside her. 9 years apart. Lena didn't respond. She was thinking about something else. The anonymous caller. It's about what was buried under it. Whoever had called her knew about the remains, and knew she would find them. That meant one of 2 things. They had been involved, or they had been watching. Bag the surrounding soil, Lena instructed. Everything within a 3-foot radius. For DNA. For anything. If Hale had been buried carefully, someone had taken time. If he had been rushed, there might be mistakes. Either way, she wanted every fragment. At 4:45 a.m., Lena returned to the station, exhausted but wired. The file on Thomas Hale was pulled from archives. Missing person. Age 41 at the time. Small business owner. Ran a construction subcontracting company. Reported missing by his wife after he failed to come home from a meeting. Last known location, Bryan County. Case status, cold. Meeting with who? Lena asked. Grant skimmed the original report. It says he had an appointment with a property developer. Something about a dispute over payment. Name. Grant flipped a page. Bryan Development Group. Lena felt the pieces start aligning. That's the same company Daniel Mercer liquidated 6 months ago. Grant nodded slowly. So Hale worked with them. Mercer handled their finances. And both ended up dead. Lena leaned back in her chair. Pull everything on Bryan Development Group. By sunrise, a pattern began emerging. 9 years ago, Bryan Development Group had purchased 114 Briar Hollow Road during a land acquisition spree. They planned to build a small luxury housing extension in the neighborhood. Thomas Hale's construction company had been contracted for early groundwork, excavation, foundation reinforcement. But the project stalled. Funding issues. Permitting delays. Then suddenly, Hale vanished. The development plan was quietly scrapped. The house was flipped back onto the market, and the company continued operating until it declared bankruptcy earlier this year. And Mercer was hired to clean up the financial mess, Grant said. Lena nodded. What if he found something? Like what? She tapped the table. A 9-year-old body buried under company property. Grant exhaled slowly. You think Mercer discovered the remains? Or evidence of them? She pulled up Mercer's call logs from the night he died. One number stood out. An outgoing call at 11:47 p.m. Lasted 32 seconds. Recipient, Bryan Development Group's former CEO. Name, Richard Lang. Grant frowned. Lang retired after the bankruptcy filing. Where is he now? Grant typed quickly. Still local. Lives 15 minutes from Briar Hollow. Lena stood. Let's wake him up. Richard Lang answered the door in silk pajamas and irritation. It vanished when he saw the badges. This is about Daniel Mercer, Lena said without preamble. Lang swallowed. I heard about that. Tragic. You spoke to him last night. Lang hesitated just long enough to matter. Yes, he admitted. He called unexpectedly. About what? He sounded unsettled. How so? He said he had questions about a property. Which one? Lang's gaze flickered, brief, involuntary. Briar Hollow Road. Silence stretched between them. What kind of questions? Lena pressed. He mentioned historical liability. Define that. He asked whether any prior incidents had occurred on site during development. Lena stepped closer. And what did you tell him? I told him no. You're certain? Yes. Lena held his gaze. And that was the end of the conversation. Lang hesitated again. He said something strange before hanging up. What? He said, I know what's under it. The room felt colder. And how did you respond? I didn't have the chance. He hung up. Lena studied him carefully. You didn't go to Briar Hollow Road after that call? Of course not. Can anyone confirm that? My wife. Was she awake? Lang's jaw tightened. She was asleep. Convenient. Back at the station, Lena replayed the hidden camera footage again. There was something subtle she had missed the first time. Just before the screen glitched, there was a faint reflection in the bedroom mirror. A shape. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Standing in the doorway. She paused the frame. Enhanced the image. It was grainy. But visible. Someone had been inside the house with Mercer. Someone who had avoided direct camera capture. Professional, Grant murmured. Lena nodded. But professionals don't usually bury bodies in backyard crates. 9 years ago, Hale hadn't been shot and left exposed. He had been wrapped, sealed, hidden. That wasn't a hit and run. That was panic, which meant something had gone wrong. The medical examiner called just after noon. Cause of death for Thomas Hale confirmed, she said. Gunshot wound. Yes. Same entry pattern as Mercer. Forehead. Close range. Caliber. Matches Mercer's .45. Lena felt the weight of that settle in. Same execution style. 9 years apart. Same property. Same corporate connection. Time of death. Approximately 9 years ago, consistent with his disappearance. Lena thanked her and hung up. Grant stared at the board where photos and timelines were pinned. So either the same killer, or someone recreating the same method. Lena crossed her arms. Or someone tying up loose ends. Grant frowned. What loose ends? She pointed to Mercer's photo. He was liquidating the company. And bankruptcy audits are thorough. He would have examined old property records. Grant's eyes widened slightly. He might have noticed discrepancies in construction costs. Or unexplained foundation repairs. Silence fell. What if the body wasn't originally meant to stay buried? Grant asked quietly. Lena looked at him. What do you mean? What if Hale was killed during an altercation at the site, and they buried him temporarily, planning to move him later? But the project stalled, Lena finished. And they never came back, which meant the house had been sold with a body beneath it. Unknowingly. Or knowingly. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. She answered without speaking. The same calm voice returned. You found him? Yes, she said evenly. A faint exhale on the other end. You're digging where you shouldn't. You're the one who told me to. A pause. I gave you a warning. About what? History repeats itself. Lena's jaw tightened. You're referring to Mercer. I'm referring to you. The line clicked dead. Grant stared at her. His escalating. No, Lena said quietly. His watching. That evening, Lena drove back to Briar Hollow Road alone. The house sat silent again, police tape fluttering in the wind. She walked through the empty rooms slowly. Living room. Kitchen. Hallway. Master bedroom. She stood where Mercer had fallen. The floorboards had been marked for evidence. She looked up at the hidden camera's former position. Whoever installed it had done so recently, which meant someone had anticipated Mercer coming here. Or lured him. Her mind returned to one unanswered question. How did Mercer gain access to the house at midnight? She stepped outside to the lockbox. Crime scene techs had pulled fingerprints earlier. Only Monica's. And Mercer's. But lockboxes record access times digitally. She called the listing office. Pull the access log for 114 Briar Hollow, she instructed. Minutes later, an email pinged her phone. She opened it. Last legitimate access by Monica Dale, 3 weeks ago. But below that, an entry from 11:58 p.m. last night. Access granted. Code used, 0914. Lena's heart skipped. Who knows that code? She asked Monica over the phone. Only me. You've never changed it. It's the default I use for all my listings. Why 0914? There was a brief silence. It's my birthday. Lena ended the call slowly. The killer hadn't broken in. He had known the code, which meant one of two things. He knew Monica, or he had access to her. Lena looked back at the house. 2 men dead, 9 years apart. Both shot the same way. Both tied to the same development company. And someone with inside access to the lockbox. The case wasn't about an abandoned house. It wasn't about buried remains. It was about a secret that had survived nearly a decade. Until Daniel Mercer uncovered it. And now, whoever buried Thomas Hale was cleaning house. The only question left was, who else knew? And how long before they tried to silence her too? Detective Lena Ma didn't go home that night. She sat in her office under the hum of fluorescent lights, staring at one simple number written across her whiteboard. 0914. A birthday. A default lockbox code. Used at 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes before Daniel Mercer walked into that staged bedroom and died. Only 2 people were confirmed to know it. Monica Dale, and whoever Monica had trusted. Lena rubbed her temples and looked at Officer Grant. Background check on Monica. Full sweep. Grant hesitated. You think she's involved? I think someone close to her is. By morning, Monica's file was on Lena's desk. 34 years old. Licensed realtor for 7 years. Clean financial history. No criminal record. No known ties to Briar Development Group. But there was one thing. Her ex-boyfriend. Name, Kyle Brennan. Former private security contractor. Employment history included overseas assignments and 2 years with a regional corporate risk firm. The same firm had done consulting work for Briar Development Group during its expansion phase 9 years ago. Lena's eyes sharpened. How long were they together? She asked. 3 years, Grant replied. Broke up 8 months ago. Amicable. Grant skimmed notes from social media and court filings. Restraining order filed briefly. She withdrew it. Lena leaned back slowly. Bring her in. Monica sat in the interrogation room again, this time looking far more fragile. You didn't mention Kyle Brennan yesterday, Lena said calmly. Monica blinked. Kyle? What does he have to do with this? He worked security for Briar Development Group. That was years ago. He would have had access to development sites. Monica swallowed. Okay. And he knows your birthday. Her face drained of color. He wouldn't. He wouldn't what? He wouldn't hurt anyone. Did he ever ask about your listings? Monica hesitated. Sometimes. He was paranoid about security. Did he ever ask about Briar Hollow Road? Silence. Lena leaned forward slightly. Monica. Yes, she whispered. Last week. What did he ask? He asked if it was still empty. If anyone had been inside. Why? He said he thought someone was snooping. Lena's pulse ticked upward. Did you tell him about Daniel Mercer? No. I didn't even know Mercer existed until yesterday. Did Kyle ever have access to your lockbox app? No. Never. Did he ever borrow your phone? Monica's breathing quickened. Sometimes, when his battery died. Lena held her gaze. And your lockbox codes are saved in your phone. Monica's silence was answer enough. An arrest warrant was issued by noon. Kyle Brennan lived in a rental house 20 minutes outside Briar County, but when deputies arrived, the house was empty. Closets cleared. Computer gone. Vehicle missing. His running, Grant said grimly. No, Lena replied quietly. His moving. The break came from traffic cameras. A black pickup registered to Brennan had been captured at 11:42 p.m. the night Mercer died. Location. 2 blocks from Briar Hollow Road. Lena stared at the still image. Brennan had been close. Too close to be coincidence. But something didn't sit right. If Brennan had killed Thomas Hale 9 years ago, why wait until now to silence Mercer? Unless Mercer had triggered something. She pulled Mercer's financial audit records again. Scrolling. Cross-referencing. Then she saw it. A flagged transaction from 9 years ago. Briar Development Group had paid a subcontractor labeled BH Logistics a lump sum 1 week after Thomas Hale disappeared. Amount, $480,000. Lena frowned. That's a lot of money for logistics. Grant searched corporate filings. BH Logistics was dissolved 8 years ago. Owner. Grant's fingers froze over the keyboard. Kyle Brennan. The room fell silent. 9 years ago, Brennan wasn't just security. He owned a side logistics company. Paid nearly $500,000 days after Hale vanished. Payment for what? Grant asked. Lena answered softly. Clean up. But the number bothered her. $480,000 was more than hush money. It was leverage. She dug deeper. Briar Development Group had taken out an insurance policy on 114, Briar Hollow Road shortly before Hale's disappearance. Policy included liability coverage for on-site accidents. Grant leaned back slowly. You think Hale died accidentally? Lena considered it. Construction site. Dispute over payment. Late night meeting. Things escalate. Gun present. Accidental discharge. Panic. Corporate executives don't call police. They call someone like Brennan. But if it were an accident, why the identical execution style shot to Mercer? No. Hale hadn't died accidentally. He had been executed. And someone had paid Brennan to bury it. Literally. That evening, Lena returned to the excavation site alone. The crate was gone. The hole filled. But the soil still felt disturbed. She crouched near the foundation of the house, studying the old concrete. 9 years ago, the development plan had stalled. But before that, foundation work had begun. She noticed something odd. A seam line along the rear corner of the house. Concrete slightly newer than surrounding areas. She called Grant. Bring the radar unit back. Within an hour, ground-penetrating radar scanned beneath the foundation slab. The technician's face shifted as the screen lit up. Detective. There's more. The shape wasn't small. It wasn't a crate. It was a void. Roughly 6 feet long. 3 feet wide. Directly beneath the master bedroom floor. Lena felt the air leave her lungs. Break it. Concrete dust filled the air as workers jackhammered through the slab. It took 4 to 5 minutes. When the final section cracked open, the smell hit first. Old. Trapped. Forgotten. Inside the cavity, another plastic-wrapped form. This one smaller. Much smaller. Grant swallowed. Oh my God. Lena stared down. Child-sized. The wallet in the crate had identified Thomas Hale. But this wasn't part of a construction dispute. This was something else entirely. Carefully, forensic techs lifted the remains. Inside the plastic, a child's clothing, a faded yellow jacket, and a locket. Lena's hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside was a tiny photo. A little girl, smiling. On the back of the photo, written in pen, Emily, a 0914. Lena's heartbeat thundered in her ears. Monica's birthday. The lockbox code. The default number that had unlocked the house. She looked at Grant. Run missing children cases from 9 years ago. Female. Approximately 6 to 8 years old. Grant's fingers flew over the keyboard. Seconds later, a face appeared on the screen. Emily Brennan. Age 7. Reported missing 9 years ago. Father, Kyle Brennan. Mother, deceased. Case status, unresolved. Lena felt the world tilt. Kyle Brennan's daughter had disappeared the same year Thomas Hale vanished. And her body had been buried beneath the same house. Not in the backyard. Under the foundation. Hidden permanently. Why wasn't this discovered? Grant whispered. Lena answered without looking away. Because the house was never finished. The development stalled before final inspection. The cavity had remained sealed. Waiting. Kyle Brennan hadn't just been paid to bury Thomas Hale. He had buried his own daughter. And 9 years later, Daniel Mercer had walked into the wrong house at the wrong time. The case had just changed completely. This wasn't corporate cleanup. This was personal. And if Brennan had killed his own child, there was no predicting what he would do next. Lena stood slowly. Find him. Outside, sirens began echoing through the night. Because somewhere in Bryan County, a father who had buried 2 bodies was on the move. And he had already shown he was willing to kill again. The station was silent when the confirmation came back. Dental records. Bone analysis. DNA comparison pulled from an old toothbrush stored in evidence for nearly a decade. The remains found beneath the foundation of 114, Briar Hollow Road were a match. Emily Brennan. 7 years old. Missing for 9 years. Daughter of Kyle Brennan. Lena stared at the lab report, feeling a heaviness settle in her chest. Kyle Brennan hadn't just cleaned up a murder. He had buried his own child beneath concrete. And he had lived with it. For 9 years. The question wasn't just how. It was why. Grant pinned photos of both excavation sites on the board. Backyard crate, Thomas Hale. Foundation cavity, Emily Brennan. Same property. Same year. Different burial methods. Why separate them? Grant asked quietly. Because they weren't connected, Lena replied. Except they were buried on the same site. Lena nodded slowly. Which means something happened at that house 9 years ago that involved both Hale and Emily. Grant frowned. But Emily was reported missing from Brennan's home. Different address. Doesn't mean she disappeared there. Lena pulled up the original missing persons report. Emily Brennan had last been seen at school. Kyle had claimed she never made it home. There had been a massive search. Canvassing. Interviews. Nothing. The trail had gone cold within weeks. No suspects. No ransom note. No evidence of abduction. Now Lena knew why. Because the person who reported her missing had buried her himself. But something still didn't make sense. If Brennan had killed his daughter, why bury her at a construction site tied to Briar Development Group? Why risk that connection? Unless she hadn't died at home. Lena's mind replayed the timeline. Thomas Hale had a meeting with Briar Development the night he disappeared. Kyle Brennan was on-site security for the development. Emily Brennan disappeared within 24 hours of Hale. Lena looked at Grant. Pull phone tower data from Hale and Brennan from 9 years ago. Grant gave her a look. That's archived. It'll take hours. Start. While Grant worked, Lena went to visit someone she hadn't spoken to yet. Richard Lang, former CEO of Briar Development Group. He opened the door more slowly this time. His eyes flicked to Lena's face, searching for something. Did you find more? He asked quietly. Yes, she said. She didn't wait to be invited in. She stepped into his living room. You remember Thomas Hale? She began. Lang nodded stiffly. He was a subcontractor. You had a meeting with him the night he disappeared. Yes. Where? At the Briar Hollow property. Lena watched his face carefully. You never mentioned that. You didn't ask. Her eyes narrowed. You told us yesterday you had no knowledge of prior incidents at that property. Lang's jaw tightened. I didn't. Lena stepped closer. We found a second body under the foundation. For the first time, real fear flashed across his face. Whose? Emily Brennan. Lang went pale. That's impossible. It isn't. He staggered slightly back against a chair. She went missing, he whispered. Everyone knew that. Yes, Lena said. And now we know where she ended up. Lang sank into the chair. You think I think something happened at that house 9 years ago, Lena said evenly. Something that involved Hale, Brennan, and a child. Lang shook his head slowly. No children were ever on site. Then explain why she's under your foundation. Silence filled the room. Finally, Lang spoke. That night, Hale came furious. He said we'd underpaid him for excavation work. Threatened to sue. Who was present? Me, Brennan, and Hale. No one else. Lang hesitated. There was someone who came by briefly. Who? A woman. Hale's wife. Lena felt a ripple move through her thoughts. Hale's wife. She showed up angry. Accused him of working too late. They argued outside. And then she left. Time. Around 10 p.m. Mercer died around midnight, Lena said quietly. Hale likely died shortly after 10. Lang swallowed. Hale pulled a gun, he said suddenly. Lena's expression didn't change. Go on. He was unstable. Accused us of cheating him. He drew the weapon. And Brennan disarmed him. How? I don't know. It happened fast. Who fired the shot? Lang's eyes darted. I didn't see clearly. You were standing there. It was chaotic. Lena leaned in. And a 7-year-old child was there too. Lang's face twisted. I didn't know she was there. Explain. Lang's breathing grew shallow. After Hale was shot, we panicked. Brennan said he'd handle it. Said he had contacts. Handle what? Disposal. Lena's jaw tightened. And the child? Lang closed his eyes briefly. She came out from the back seat of his truck. Silence. She had been waiting in the vehicle, he continued. She must have seen everything. Lena felt her stomach turn. What happened next? Lang's voice dropped to a whisper. She was crying. Screaming. Brennan tried to calm her. And she said she was going to tell. Lena held her breath. Lang didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. You let him kill her, Lena said flatly. Lang looked up, horror etched across his face. No, I didn't know he would. But he did. Lang's silence was confession enough. Back at the station, Grant looked up from his computer as Lena entered. You're not going to like this, he said. Try me. Phone tower pings from 9 years ago show Brennan's cell at Briar Hollow that night. That we expected. But there's another number pinging at the same time. Who? Monica Dale. Lena froze. She would have been 25. Her phone hit the tower near Briar Hollow at 9:48 p.m. Why? Grant scrolled further. She lived nearby at the time. Does she have any connection to Hale? Grant's fingers paused. Yes. Lena stared. How? She's Thomas Hale's niece. The room went completely still. Monica Dale wasn't just the realtor. She was family. And she had chosen 0914 as her default lockbox code. The birthday of the child buried beneath the house. A child connected to the man who killed her uncle. Lena's mind raced. Had Monica known all along? Had she suspected? Oh, had she been watching too? And if Kyle Brennan realized Mercer was reopening the past, was Monica next? Lena grabbed her jacket. Where is she? Grant checked his tracker. Her phone just pinged near. He looked up, alarm rising in his eyes. Briar Hollow Road. Lena's heart slammed. The quiet house wasn't finished yet. And if history was repeating, someone was about to die again. The first time Emily heard the voice, she thought it was grief. Grief does strange things to the mind. It fills empty rooms with echoes. It turns silence into whispers. It makes you hear things that aren't there. That's what she told herself. It was 2:17 a.m. The house was still. The lake beyond the windows was a sheet of black glass. Even the wind had gone quiet. And then, a sound. Soft. Close. Inside the walls. Emily's eyes opened instantly. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. There it was again. A faint scraping. Like fingernails dragging slowly across wood. Her heart began to pound so hard she could feel it in her throat. The guest room. The sound was coming from the guest room wall. The room where Daniel had been sleeping the night before he vanished. She sat up slowly. Stop, she whispered to herself. You're imagining it. But then, a whisper. So faint she almost missed it. Emily. Her blood turned to ice. The voice was male. Soft. Hoarse. It sounded like it had traveled through dirt. She threw the blankets back and grabbed the lamp from her nightstand like a weapon. Her hands trembled violently as she stepped into the hallway. The guest room door stood closed. Exactly as she'd left it. The whisper came again. Em. Her stomach twisted. It sounded like Daniel. But not quite. Not right. She pushed the door open. The room was empty. Moonlight spilled across the bed. The air felt wrong. Thick. Heavy. The scraping noise returned. Not from the wall. From inside it. Emily's eyes slowly moved to the far corner of the room. There. Near the baseboard. A thin line ran vertically through the wallpaper. A seam. She stepped closer. The line wasn't part of the design. It was a cut. Perfectly straight. As if someone had sliced the wall open and sealed it back shut. The whisper came again. Right behind the wall. Help me. Emily stumbled back, her legs nearly giving out. No, she breathed. No, no, no. The house had been renovated in 1994. That's what the realtor had said. Updated interior. Reinforced structure. Reinforced. Emily lunged forward and pressed her ear against the wall. Silence. Then, a slow, dragging breath. From inside. She screamed. The police arrived within 20 minutes. Officer Grant, same as before, stepped into the guest room, looking exhausted and irritated. You're telling me, he said carefully, that you heard your missing husband inside the wall. I know how it sounds, Emily snapped. But there's something back there. There's a hollow space. I heard him. Grant crouched near the baseboard. He knocked on the wall. Solid. He knocked again. Solid. He stood up. It's drywall over studs. Standard construction. There's a seam. Emily insisted. Right there. Grant examined it. It's a crack in the wallpaper. It's not. He sighed. Mrs. Harper, you haven't slept. You've been under extreme stress. Auditory hallucinations aren't uncommon. She felt slapped. You think I'm losing my mind? I think grief does strange things. The same words she'd told herself. Grant straightened. We'll add this to the report. But right now, there's no evidence of foul play. Your husband is still classified as a missing person. He paused. You should consider staying somewhere else. Emily laughed. A sharp, broken sound. And let whoever's inside my walls stay here alone. Grant didn't answer. That night, Emily didn't sleep. She sat in the guest room with a kitchen knife in her lap and stared at the wall. At 3:06 a.m., the whisper returned. Clearer this time. Cold. Her breath caught. I hear you, she whispered. The wall responded with a slow, deliberate thud. Once. Twice. 3 times. Like a signal. Emily moved closer. Daniel. A long pause. Then. No. Her heart stopped. No. Not Daniel. The voice shifted. Lower. Different. You shouldn't have come back. The knife clattered from her hands. The temperature in the room dropped sharply. Emily's breath fogged in the air. You left before, the voice continued softly. But you always come back. Her stomach twisted violently. Left before. I've never been here before, she whispered. A slow, scraping laugh answered her. Liar. The wall began to tremble. Not violently, but steadily. Dust sifted down from the ceiling. Emily stumbled backward as the seam in the wallpaper slowly peeled open. From top to bottom, like something inside was pushing outward. The drywall cracked, split, and a dark gap appeared. Not large enough to crawl through, but large enough to see into. Emily stepped forward, against every survival instinct she had, and looked inside. Darkness. Deep. Unnatural. Not like an empty cavity between studs. This was space. A tunnel. Running downward. Into black. A smell drifted out. Damp earth. Rut. Old water. And something metallic. Blood. The whisper came from below now. You remember. Her head began to spin. Images flickered at the edges of her mind. A child. Running through trees. A wooden dock. Black water. A hand pulling her under. Emily staggered back, clutching her temples. No, she gasped. That's not real. That's not real. The wall cracked wider. The opening stretched. Inviting. Come down, the voice murmured. The sound of water sloshing echoed faintly from below. Emily backed into the hallway, shaking. The wall snapped shut. Seam resealed. Silence returned. As if nothing had happened. Morning came gray and sickly. Emily didn't call the police. She knew what they'd say. Instead, she drove to town. To the library. The woman at the desk, Marjorie Bell, recognized her instantly. You're the Harper girl, she said softly. Emily froze. Excuse me. Marjorie smiled thinly. You look just like her. Like who? Emily Dawson. The name hit her like a physical blow. That's not my name. Marjorie tilted her head. It was. The air seemed to thin. I've never lived here before, Emily said carefully. Marjorie's smile didn't fade. You disappeared in 1992. The world tilted. No. Yes. Big search. Divers in the lake. They never found your body. Emily's hands began to shake uncontrollably. You're mistaken. Marjorie stood slowly and walked to a back filing cabinet. She pulled out a yellowed newspaper clipping and slid it across the desk. Emily looked down. The headline read, Local girl vanishes from Blackwater Lake. The photo beneath it stole the breath from her lungs. A little girl, 8 years old, brown hair, gray eyes, her face, her exact face, the name beneath it, Emily Dawson, missing since August 3rd, 1992. Emily's knees nearly buckled. That's not me, she whispered. Marjorie leaned closer. You were found 3 days later, wandering on Route 16. No memory of what happened. Emily's pulse roared in her ears. That's impossible. They said you were in shock. You didn't remember your own parents. Emily's stomach dropped. Her parents. She barely remembered her childhood. Faces blurred. Houses vague. Everything before age 9 felt foggy. You left town 6 months later, Marjorie continued. Your family said it was too painful to stay. Emily stepped back from the desk. Her head spun violently. You drowned, Marjorie said softly. They just didn't find the body. Emily drove home in a daze. The lake looked different now. Not peaceful. Hungry. When she stepped inside the house, the air felt charged. Waiting. She walked directly to the guest room. The seam in the wall was gone. Perfectly smooth. As if it had never been there. She pressed her hand against it. Cold. I didn't drown, she whispered. The wall vibrated faintly. You did. Her knees gave out. She slid down the wall, shaking. You came back, the voice continued. Like you always do. A memory surfaced suddenly. Clear. Sharp. She was 8. Standing at the edge of the dock. A boy behind her. Older. Smiling. He pushed her. She fell. Cold water swallowed her whole. She screamed. Something wrapped around her ankle. Pulled her down. 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 Not a hand. Not a person. Something else. Waiting. Watching. The voice returned. You made a deal. Her breath stopped. No. You wanted to live. Tears streamed down her face. You gave us something. The room seemed to tilt sideways. What did I give you? She whispered. Silence. Then. First, your memories. The wall thudded once. Now. A pause. Heavy. Hungry. Your husband. Emily screamed. The drywall split violently. The seam tore open again. Wider this time. The tunnel beyond pulsed with darkness. And from far below, a faint, desperate scream echoed upward. Daniel. Alive. Somewhere beneath the house. The truth rising from below. And Emily about to decide how far she's willing to go, to undo a deal she doesn't remember making. The opening in the wall did not close this time. It widened. Slowly. Patiently. Like a mouth stretching open after a long sleep. Emily stood frozen in the guest room, staring into the darkness carved inside her own home. The smell was stronger now, damp soil, old wood, lake water. And beneath it, rut. Not fresh. Not recent. Ancient. From deep inside the tunnel, Daniel's scream echoed again. Faint. Hoarse. Emily. Her body moved before her mind could catch up. She grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer, then a rope from the garage. Her hands worked mechanically, survival taking over where fear threatened to paralyze her. The voice from below whispered softly, "You won't make it far." She ignored it, tied the rope around the hallway radiator, tested the knot twice, then stepped back into the guest room. The hole had widened enough for her to squeeze through. Inside, instead of studs and insulation, there was earth. Packed dirt forming crude steps spiraling downward, as if the house had been built over something much older. Something buried. Emily took one final look at the normal world behind her. The bed, the dresser, the cracked wallpaper. It felt like she was standing on the edge of reality itself. Daniel screamed again. That decided it. She slipped into the opening. The earth was cold against her palms. The air shifted immediately, thicker, wetter. The rope slid through her hands as she descended. The beam of her flashlight cut through the darkness. The tunnel walls weren't entirely natural. There were marks carved into them. Symbols. Repeating patterns. Circles inside circles. Some scratched deep. Some faded with age. She didn't recognize them. But something inside her did. A flicker of familiarity stirred behind her eyes. A memory without shape. She descended 10 feet. 20. 30. The sounds of the house above faded. Replaced by something else. Dripping water. Distant breathing. And faint whispers layered atop each other. Not one voice. Many. You came back. Always comes back. Belongs to us. Her grip tightened on the rope. Daniel, she shouted downward. The response came instantly. I'm here. Closer now. Relief nearly buckled her knees. How far down? She called. I don't know. His voice cracked. It's dark. There's water. His words cut off abruptly, as if something had covered his mouth. The whispers grew louder. Too late. You remember now. Emily's foot hit something solid. Ground. She let go of the rope and stepped off. The tunnel opened into a wide underground chamber. A flashlight revealed stone walls slick with moisture. At the center of the chamber, water. A black pool, still as glass. The surface reflected nothing. No light, no movement, just emptiness. The lake, it extended beneath the house, far deeper than the shoreline ever suggested. Daniel stood at the far edge of the pool, knee-deep in the water, his arms pinned to his sides. By nothing. He wasn't tied, wasn't restrained, yet he couldn't move. His face was pale, eyes wide with terror. "Emily," he whispered, "don't come closer." Relief flooded her. He was alive. She stepped forward. The air shifted violently. The pool rippled once, then stilled. "You shouldn't have returned," the layered voices said from everywhere at once. Emily ignored them. She moved toward Daniel. Halfway across the chamber, the ground changed beneath her feet. From dirt to wood, old wooden planks forming a familiar shape. A dock. Her breath caught. The underground chamber was no longer just stone and water. It was recreating something. The dock from her childhood. The one from her memory. The one where she had been pushed. Daniel's eyes widened. "Emily, stop." But she was already remembering. The summer of 1992. The boy behind her. His name. Caleb. Caleb Rourke. The town golden child. Charming. Cruel. She remembered the way he smiled before he pushed her. Remembered the laughter. Remembered the shock of cold water swallowing her whole. The dock beneath her feet now creaked. A figure stood at the far end. A boy. 8 years old. Brown hair. Freckles. Smiling. "You shouldn't have told," he said softly. Her breath stuttered. "You pushed me." He shrugged. "You were annoying." The air trembled. The pool darkened further. "You were supposed to stay down." Daniel struggled weakly. "Emily, there's nothing there." But she saw him. Clearly. "You drowned," Caleb continued. "But they gave you back." The whispers grew louder. "They gave you back. You promised." Her stomach twisted violently. She had made a deal. In the cold darkness beneath the water, something had wrapped around her ankle. Something vast. Something old. It had offered her air. Life. In exchange for memory, she whispered. "And more," Caleb said. His eyes were no longer childish. They were ancient. Black. Depthless. "You fed us without knowing." The chamber shifted again. Flashes surrounded her. Missing pets. Drowned animals. 3 unsolved disappearances over the years. All near the lake. All forgotten. All unconnected. The thing beneath the water had been feeding. And she had been its doorway. "You brought him here," Caleb said, nodding toward Daniel. "No," she breathed. "You always bring someone back." The dock beneath her feet began to rot in real time. Boards splintering. Water seeping up through cracks. Daniel screamed as the water around him rose suddenly to his waist. "Emily!" She ran forward. The dock snapped beneath her feet and she plunged into the black water. Cold. Colder than death. It swallowed her instantly. Pulled her downward. Her flashlight flickered out. Darkness consumed everything. Hands. Not hands. Shapes. Long. Boneless. Wrapped around her legs. Her waist. Her throat. "You owe us." Water filled her mouth. Her lungs burned. Just like before. Just like 1992. But this time, she remembered. The deal. She had been drowning. Panicking. Alone. And something had spoken inside her mind. "Live. Or sink. Give us something. And live." What? She had thought desperately. "Bring us back." Open the door. She hadn't understood. But she had agreed. And the water had released her. Now it tightened again. Daniel's muffled scream echoed faintly through the water above. "Take me," she thought wildly. "Let him go." Silence. The pressure increased. Crushing. "You already belong to us." Her vision blurred. Spots of white exploded behind her eyes. "You cannot pay twice." Her chest convulsed. She was seconds from blacking out. Then, a memory surfaced. Sharp. Clear. When she had been found wandering Route 16 after the drowning. She hadn't been alone. A man had found her. A fisherman. Old. Terrified. He had told the police something before he died 2 years later. Something about the lake not giving things back freely. Something about fire. The thought ignited inside her. Fire. Water feared nothing. But what lay beneath? Feared something else. Emily forced her eyes open underwater. Through the dark shapes. Through the writhing mass. She looked down. At the true shape beneath. It wasn't a creature. It was a cavity. A wound in reality. A tear. A doorway. And doorways could be sealed. She reached blindly for the flashlight clipped to her belt. Miraculously, it still flickered faintly. She ripped it free. Smashed it against the jagged stone beneath the water. Sparks. Tiny. Weak. But enough. The ancient wooden dock above, rotting and dry in places, touched the surface. The spark caught. Flame crawled along the wood unnaturally fast. Even underwater, the fire seemed to burn. Not normal fire. Something else. The chamber screamed. Not in voices, but in vibration. The grip around her body loosened. Daniel's form splashed violently as the water around him began to boil. Emily kicked upward. Hard. Her lungs were collapsing. Her vision narrowing. She broke the surface with a gasp so violent it tore her throat. The dock was fully ablaze now. Flames burning without smoke. Without fuel. Daniel collapsed toward her as the invisible force holding him vanished. She grabbed him. Climb, she screamed. The tunnel upward trembled violently. Dirt collapsing. Stones cracking. The entire chamber was coming apart. They stumbled toward the rope. The fire roared behind them as the black pool churned wildly. Something massive shifted beneath its surface. Something furious. You cannot leave, the layered voices shrieked. Emily shoved Daniel toward the rope. Go! He climbed, coughing, slipping. She followed. The tunnel collapsed behind them, earth crashing downward. The roar beneath turned into a deafening, otherworldly howl. They scrambled upward, lungs burning, hands raw. At last, light. The guest room floor. They spilled out just as the opening in the wall snapped shut. The seams sealed instantly. Silence. Complete. The house stood still. No tunnel. No crack. No sound. Only smoke curling faintly from Emily's soaked clothes. Daniel lay beside her, shaking violently. Was that real? He whispered. Emily stared at the wall. A reflection faintly visible in the window. Older. Exhausted. But fully aware. Yes, she said softly. And for the first time in her life. She remembered everything. Behind them, beyond the walls, Blackwater Lake lay still. Too still. Waiting. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Not the suffocating silence from before. Not the heavy, listening kind. This was different. Empty. Emily sat at the kitchen table wrapped in a blanket, her hands still shaking from the cold that refused to leave her bones. Daniel sat across from her, pale and hollow-eyed, staring at nothing. Neither of them had spoken for nearly 10 minutes. Finally, Daniel whispered, there was something in the water. Emily didn't answer right away. She was watching the lake through the window. Blackwater Lake looked peaceful again. Smooth. Harmless. Like it hadn't tried to swallow them whole. Like it hadn't been alive. There was, she said quietly. Daniel swallowed hard. It wasn't holding me. I thought it was. But it wasn't. His voice trembled. It was inside my head. Emily's eyes shifted to him. What did it say? Daniel hesitated. That I was never supposed to matter. Her breath caught. That I was just payment. The word settled between them like a stone. Payment. She closed her eyes. It told me I owed it, she whispered. Daniel's expression darkened. For what? For living. By morning, the house felt smaller. Not physically, but spiritually. Like something had been carved out of it. Emily walked into the guest room again. The wall was flawless. No seam. No crack. No sign of earth or tunnel or fire. If not for the rope still tied to the radiator, she might have believed they imagined it. Daniel stepped beside her. You remember everything now? He asked. She nodded slowly. Yes. Fragments had come back all at once after the fire. Not gently, not gradually, but violently. She remembered the dock, the push, the water filling her lungs, the darkness below, and the voice. It hadn't been a monster. It hadn't been a shape. It was a presence, ancient and patient. It hadn't forced her. It had offered, and she had accepted. Bring us back. Open the door. She hadn't understood what that meant. Now she did. She hadn't just survived that drowning. She had become a doorway, a tether, a bridge between the lake and the surface. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. So it's over, right? Emily didn't answer. She walked to the window. The lake was still, but something was wrong. There were no birds, no ripples, no wind. The silence felt like breath being held. It's hurt, she said quietly. Daniel frowned. Hurt? The fire damaged it. Not destroyed. Just wounded. How do you wound water? You don't. Her eyes darkened. You wound what lives beneath it. By afternoon, the town had begun to notice something strange. 3 boats were found drifting empty near the center of the lake. No signs of struggle. No blood. Just abandoned. The owners were missing. Emily stood in the grocery store checkout line when she overheard the conversation. Probably ran off, one man muttered. Together, another replied skeptically. Emily felt cold. It was feeding again, but faster now. More aggressively. As if it were desperate. As if it were bleeding. Daniel met her outside the store. You heard? She nodded. We didn't finish it, she said. Daniel's face drained of color. Emily, we almost died. And other people will. He stared at her like he didn't recognize her. Why you? He asked. Why does it need you? She swallowed hard. Because I invited it. That night, the dreams returned. But they weren't fragmented anymore. They were clear. She was 8 again. Standing at the dock. But this time, Caleb didn't push her. She turned. She saw his intent before he moved. She saw the cruelty in his eyes. And she stepped back on her own. But the wood beneath her feet cracked anyway. The lake didn't need him. It never had. She fell. The water swallowed her. And instead of panic, she felt something else. Recognition. As if something beneath had been waiting specifically for her. Not Caleb. Not the other children who had swum there. Her. The voice had felt familiar. Not foreign. Not separate. But connected. Like an echo. She woke gasping. Daniel was already sitting upright in bed. You too? He asked. She nodded. What did you see? She hesitated. Then whispered, I don't think it chose me that night. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? I think I belonged to it before I fell. The room felt colder instantly. That's impossible, he said. But he didn't sound convinced. Emily couldn't ignore the pull anymore. It wasn't just guilt. It wasn't just fear. It was gravity. The lake was calling her. Not angrily. Not violently. But steadily. She felt it in her chest. In her bones. Like a tide moving beneath her skin. On the 3rd night after the fire, she walked to the shoreline alone. The moon hung low and heavy above Blackwater Lake. The water reflected nothing. Not even the stars. You're still here, she whispered. The surface rippled gently. Not from wind. From response. You cannot sever what was joined. The voice was softer now. Weaker. But present. You're dying, she said. A pause. Yes. The word wasn't threatening. It was factual. And you're taking people with you. They are not people. Her stomach twisted. What are they then? Openings. The lake shifted slightly. You are not the first. Her breath caught. There have been others. Doors. Images flashed across the water's surface. Faces. Children. Adults. A pattern stretching back generations. Some drowned. Some survived. All marked. All tethered. You anchor us, the voice whispered. You walk where we cannot. Her hands trembled. And when the anchor breaks. Silence. Then. We sink. The lake darkened further. You burned us. You were killing people. You fed us. Her knees nearly gave out. It was right. Unknowingly. In the years after she left town, strange things had followed her. Apartments with unexplained flooding. Neighbors who went missing. Nightmares shared by strangers. She hadn't connected it. She hadn't wanted to. You can't survive without me, she whispered. No. The water rippled outward in slow, dying circles. But if I die, she said carefully, you die too. The lake did not answer. It didn't need to. Daniel found her at dawn sitting at the edge of the dock. You can't be out here alone, he said. She didn't turn. It's dying. Good. Her voice broke. It's part of me. Daniel crouched beside her. "No," he said firmly. "It used you." She shook her head slowly. "It saved me. It made you a monster's leash." The words cut, but they were true. She had been its doorway, its extension, its bridge. The lake's surface trembled violently for just a second, as if reacting to the word monster. Daniel saw it too. He stood abruptly. "It's listening. It always is." That afternoon, news spread. 2 of the missing boaters had been found. Not drowned, not torn apart, but emptied, their bodies floating upright in the shallows. Skin pale, eyes open, no visible injuries, but something inside them was gone. Emily knew what it was. They had been drained, used. The lake was starving, and desperate. Daniel grabbed her shoulders that evening. "We leave," he said. "Tonight." She looked at him, truly looked at him, and realized something awful. If she left, it would follow, like it always had. Through pipes, through drains, through bathtubs and sinks, through rain. She was the anchor, not the house, not the town. "Huh. If I go," she whispered, "it spreads." Daniel's jaw tightened. "So what are you saying?" The lake pulsed once in the distance. A heavy, slow ripple across its surface. She met his eyes. "I have to finish it." Daniel shook his head violently. "No. It can't die while I'm alive." The words felt like ice in her throat. Understanding dawned in his face. "No," he said again, but softer now. She swallowed. I opened the door. The lake's surface grew perfectly still, listening. "And I have to close it." A single tear slid down Daniel's cheek. "There has to be another way." Emily looked back at the black water, and for the first time since she was 8 years old, she felt no fear, only clarity. "You said it yourself," she whispered. "I was payment." The lake rippled once. Not violently, not hungrily, almost. Sadly, the sky over Blackwater Lake turned the color of bruised skin. Storm clouds gathered without wind. The air felt swollen, thick with pressure, like the world itself was holding its breath. Emily stood at the shoreline at dusk. Daniel stood 10 feet behind her, far enough to pretend he wasn't about to lose her, close enough to refuse to let her disappear alone. "You don't know this will work," he said quietly. She didn't turn around. "I know it's the only thing that will." The lake was no longer still. It was trembling. Small ripples moved across its surface in tight circles, like something restless beneath. "I can feel it," she whispered. Daniel swallowed hard. "What?" "It's afraid." The word felt impossible. The thing beneath Blackwater Lake had felt ancient, immovable, eternal. But now, it felt fragile, cracked, wounded from the fire she had unleashed in the chamber below the house. She stepped forward onto the dock, the same dock from her childhood, rebuilt over the years, but still in the same place. The wood creaked beneath her weight. Daniel's voice broke behind her. "You don't owe it your life." She turned to him slowly. "No," she said. "I owe the people it would keep taking." The lake rippled sharply at that, as if offended, or exposed. She had figured it out in the quiet hours before dawn. The lake wasn't a monster in the traditional sense. It was a wound, a tear in something older than the town, older than the land. It had latched onto the first person who survived it. Her. And through her, it reached upward, fed, expanded. But it had one weakness. Anchors could be cut, not by drowning, not by force, but by choice. She stepped to the edge of the dock. The water below looked endless, black, depthless. "You don't have to do this," Daniel shouted. She looked back at him one final time. His face was broken, terrified. "I'm not drowning," she said softly. The lake surged violently. A wave crashed against the dock though there was no wind. "You cannot leave," the layered voices whispered from beneath the surface. "You are bound." Emily smiled faintly. "Not anymore." And she stepped off the dock. The cold hit instantly. But this time, it did not feel like hands. It felt like resistance, like pressure pushing back against her descent. The water churned violently around her. "You are ours," the voice roared now, no longer weak. "You chose wrong." She forced her eyes open underwater. Darkness surrounded her, but she no longer feared it. I revoke it, she thought clearly. The water tightened around her chest. You cannot. I was 8, she thought. The lake seemed to hesitate. You offered a child a bargain. The pressure faltered slightly. That is not binding. The water twisted violently. You breathed. You survived. Yes, she thought, but I didn't understand. Silence. Deep. Echoing. Ancient. Far below her, she could sense the wound. The tear. The doorway. It pulsed faintly. Weak. You cannot unmake what was made, the voice hissed. Emily's lungs began to burn, but she held steady. You're wrong. She closed her eyes and let go, not of life, but of fear. The lake expected panic, expected bargaining, expected desperation. Instead, she offered surrender, not to it, but to truth. I release you, she thought. The darkness shifted, confused. I am not your anchor. The water trembled violently. You will drown. Then I drown. The words carried no fear, no anger, no hatred, only certainty. Above the surface, Daniel screamed her name. The storm broke. Thunder cracked across the sky. Rain poured down in sheets. The lake erupted in towering waves. Beneath the water, something massive uncoiled. Not a body, not a creature, but a vast, shadowed presence. It wrapped around her once more. But this time, it felt smaller. Fractured. You belong below, it whispered desperately. Emily saw it clearly now. Not with her eyes, but with understanding. It was not evil. It was broken. A doorway left open too long. A hunger without purpose. You don't need me, she thought. You need to close. The darkness convulsed. The wound below her flickered. The tear in reality quivered like a dying pulse. You cannot exist without me, it hissed. Emily smiled faintly underwater. Exactly. And she stopped fighting the descent. She let herself sink fully. Past the pressure. Past the fear. Past the point of breath. Toward the tear itself. It looked like a crack in glass. A split in the fabric of something unseen. It had fed through her. Reached through her. Lived because of her. And now, it flickered violently as she approached. You are the door, it roared. No, she thought calmly. I was. She reached forward and touched the tear. It was not physical. It was sensation. Cold and sharp and endless. The moment her mind accepted death, not as fear, but as consequence, the connection snapped. Not violently, not explosively, but cleanly, like a thread cut with a blade. The darkness shrieked. The lake convulsed once, twice, and then, stillness. Above the surface, the storm ceased instantly. The rain stopped mid-fall. The wind died. The water flattened. Daniel fell to his knees at the edge of the dock. Emily, he screamed hoarsely. For 3 seconds, nothing moved. Then, a ripple. Small, gentle. Emily's body surfaced slowly. Not dragged, not thrown, just rising. Daniel lunged forward and pulled her onto the dock. Her skin was pale, cold, still. Please, he whispered. Please. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, she coughed. Water spilled from her mouth. Her chest convulsed. Air filled her lungs. Daniel sobbed openly as he wrapped her in his arms. The lake behind them lay perfectly calm. Not black, not depthless, just water, normal, reflecting the sky, reflecting the world. Empty. Emily opened her eyes weakly. It's gone, she whispered. Daniel looked at the lake, and for the first time, he believed it. No whispers, no pull, no presence watching from beneath. Just silence. True silence. The kind that does not listen back. That night, the town slept peacefully. No boats drifted. No bodies surfaced. No dreams whispered from drains. The house across Blackwater Lake felt ordinary again. Emily lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Exhausted. Alive. Free. Daniel squeezed her hand gently. You closed it, he whispered. She nodded faintly. I wasn't the last anchor, she said softly. He frowned. What do you mean? She turned her head slightly toward the window. The lake shimmered faintly under moonlight. There will always be wounds, she said. But not here. Her eyes closed slowly. The darkness that came was gentle, natural, empty, and for the first time since 1992, it held nothing inside it. For 3 days, nothing happened. No whispers, no ripples, no dreams that smelled like lake water. Blackwater Lake behaved like a lake. Boats drifted lazily across its surface. Children skipped stones. A fisherman cast his line at sunrise and laughed when he caught nothing but weeds. Normal. Emily stood at the kitchen sink on the third morning and let the tap run deliberately. Water poured out clear. Ordinary. She stared at it for a long time, waiting for something to shift inside her chest. For that pull, that quiet tide beneath her ribs. But there was nothing. Only her own heartbeat. Daniel stepped behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded. "It's quiet." He kissed her temple. "Good." But she didn't answer, because quiet didn't feel like victory. It felt like aftermath. The first thing surfaced that afternoon. Not a body. Not something grotesque. Something worse. Memory. A little girl walking through town alone in 1992. Wet hair. Bare feet. Blank stare. Emily had always believed she wandered back to town by accident after surviving the lake. But that wasn't what happened. She remembered now. She hadn't wandered. She had walked. Guided. The presence had led her back. Placed her gently at the edge of town. Returned her. Not as mercy, but as utility. She had never escaped. She had been positioned. The second thing surfaced that evening. An old police file delivered anonymously to the Harper's mailbox. No stamp. No return address. Inside were photocopies of reports from 1992. Officer statements. Witness accounts. And one page that made Emily's stomach twist. A diver's report. The search team had gone deeper than the public knew. 30 feet down. 40. 50. And then, a cavity. Not natural. A hollow beneath the lake bed. The diver reported hearing something like singing underwater. He refused to go back down. He retired 6 months later. The report had been sealed. Emily ran her fingers over the faded ink. They had known something was wrong. They had buried it. Daniel sat across from her. "You didn't do this," he said firmly. She met his eyes. "I helped it survive. You were a child. I fed it without knowing." Daniel slammed his hand against the table. "No." His voice broke. "You survived something impossible. That's not a crime." She looked toward the window. The lake shimmered peacefully. And for the first time, she wondered if something else had been sealed down there when she closed the tear. On the 5th day, a storm rolled through town. Not violent. Just rain. Emily stood at the bedroom window and watched droplets slide down the glass. She felt nothing unusual. Until the thunder hit. Low. Deep. Not from the sky. From below. Her chest tightened. The lake did not ripple. But something in the ground shifted. Daniel saw her expression change. "What? Did you feel that?" He shook his head. Another tremor. Subtle. Like something settling. Or adjusting. Emily's breath grew shallow. "Sometimes," she whispered, "when you close a door." Daniel stiffened. "You don't open another one," he said quickly. She didn't respond. Because she didn't know. That night, she dreamed again. But this time, there was no water. No darkness. No voice. Just the dock. Empty. And something resting on it. A small object. She walked toward it slowly. Heart pounding. It was a locket. Old. Rust-specked. She recognized it instantly. It had belonged to her mother. She had been wearing it the day she drowned. But it had never been recovered. Her mother had cried for weeks over that necklace. In the dream, Emily picked it up. It felt warm. Heavy. When she opened it, it wasn't her mother's photo inside. It was a map. Lines etched faintly across metal. A shape. Not of the lake. Of something beneath it. She woke up gasping. Daniel sat up immediately. "What happened?" She grabbed his arm. "It's not gone." His face went pale. "What?" "The lake is empty." "That's what we wanted." "Yes," she whispered. But something was beneath it. Silence fell heavy between them. The presence had felt ancient. But what if it hadn't been the source? What if it had been a symptom? The next morning, something else surfaced. Literally. At the southern edge of Blackwater Lake, where the water was shallow and murky, something rose from the bottom. Not a body. Not debris. A structure. Wooden beams long rotted. Stone blocks slick with algae. The remains of something old. Very old. Town officials fenced off the area quickly. But not before half the town saw it. A submerged foundation. Older than any recorded building in the region. Emily stood behind the caution tape with Daniel. Her hands trembled. That wasn't there before, Daniel said. No, she whispered. It was. It had just been hidden. Buried beneath the lake. Beneath the presence. The tear she sealed hadn't just closed a doorway. It had lowered something. Like draining a wound. The lake hadn't been deep. It had been filled. And now that it was empty, the truth was rising. An elderly man standing nearby muttered quietly. There used to be a settlement here. Before the town. Emily's heart pounded. What happened to it? She asked. The man shrugged. Burned, they say. Then flooded. Flooded. Not naturally. Daniel's voice was tight. Emily. She stepped closer to the fence. There, half visible in the mud, was a carved stone. Circles inside circles. The same symbol she had seen carved into the tunnel walls. The same pattern etched in her dream locket. This had not started with her. It had not even started with the lake. The presence had been contained. Fed. Used. Until something broke. And when it broke, it spread. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She sat on the dock alone. The water lapped gently at the wood. Normal. Ordinary. But she felt something else now. Not inside her. Not tethered. But watching from very far away. A distance so vast it didn't feel immediate. It felt patient. Daniel joined her quietly. You think we just uncovered something worse? He said. She didn't answer right away. Then softly. I think we uncovered something older. The wind shifted slightly. For a brief second, the lake's surface reflected something that wasn't the moon. A shape. Faint. Far below the sediment. Not moving. Not reaching. Just there. Dormant. Daniel didn't see it. Emily did. And she understood something terrible. The presence she had severed had been an echo. A fragment. A splinter of something that had once been whole. And whatever had once been whole was still buried. The excavation began quietly. Town officials called it a historical discovery. Old foundation stones. Burned timbers. Possible evidence of a 19th century settlement lost to flooding. They kept the language careful. Measured. Safe. But Emily knew better. Because the night before the digging started, she dreamed again. And this time, she did not dream as herself. She stood on dry land where Blackwater Lake should have been. But there was no lake. Only a shallow basin of cracked earth stretching outward under a gray sky. In the center stood a structure. Stone walls. Circular. Deliberate. And carved into every visible surface. Circles inside circles. Not decorative. Containment. She walked toward it slowly. The air vibrated faintly. Not with menace. With pressure. Like something immense breathing behind stone. The door to the circular structure stood open. Inside. Darkness. But not empty. Layered. Dense. Alive. You remember, a voice whispered. Not the fractured lake voice. Not desperate. Not wounded. This one was vast. Steady. Ancient beyond language. You were not first. Her pulse pounded in her ears. What are you? She whispered. Silence. Then, we were held. Not singular. Plural. Held. Not born there. Not natural. Contained. The stone beneath her feet trembled. The dream shifted. Flashes erupted around her. A settlement built over something older. A group of settlers discovering a cavern beneath the land. A decision made in fear. Stone raised. Symbols carved. Fire used to seal. The lake created deliberately to drown what lay below. Not to summon. To suppress. And then, time. Generations. Forgetting. Until one summer day in 1992, a child fell through weakened ground. And touched what had been held for over a century. Emily woke gasping. Daniel was already sitting upright. Another dream? He asked quietly. She nodded slowly. It wasn't the lake. His jaw tightened. What wasn't? The lake wasn't the source. The excavation site buzzed with activity that afternoon. Backhoes, surveyors, curious townspeople standing behind barricades. Emily stood at the edge of the crowd, her heart pounding steadily. The waterline had receded significantly since the tear was sealed. The lake was still present, but shallower, exposing more of the buried foundation beneath. One of the workers shouted. They had uncovered a staircase. Stone, spiraling downward, into darkness. Emily's breath caught. Daniel grabbed her wrist gently. "No," he whispered. She didn't move. "I have to see." "Emily." "I'm not tethered anymore," she said softly. "It can't use me." But as she said it, she wasn't entirely sure. The site supervisor reluctantly allowed her closer after she explained her childhood connection to the lake. She stepped past the caution tape, past the workers, and stood at the top of the exposed staircase. The air rising from below felt cool, dry, not wet like the tunnel beneath her house. This was older, still, sealed. A flashlight beam cut downward. Stone walls carved intentionally smooth. And there, at the bottom, a circular chamber, intact, uncollapsed. Waiting. They lowered a camera first. Standard procedure. The live feed displayed on a portable monitor. Emily stood beside the supervisor as the camera descended. The beam swept across the chamber floor. Stone. Dust. No water. No movement. And then, symbols, carved deep into the walls, layer upon layer. Circles intersecting circles. The same pattern from her dreams. From the tunnel. From the locket. The camera panned slowly. At the center of the chamber. A pit. Perfectly round. 10 feet across. Black. Light did not reflect from it. The supervisor frowned. "Looks like an old well." Emily's stomach dropped. It wasn't a well. It was the tear. Sealed. The lake had not created the presence. The lake had been built above it. As weight. As pressure. As lid. And when she severed the fragment feeding through her, she had not destroyed it. She had starved one tendril. But the core remained. Dormant. The camera flickered briefly. Static crackled across the screen. The image distorted for half a second. And in that distortion, Emily saw movement. Not from the pit. From the walls. Like shadows sliding between carvings. Then the feed cleared. Stillness returned. The supervisor shrugged. Probably interference. Emily stepped back slowly. Her heart hammered violently now. It wasn't reaching. It wasn't calling. It wasn't desperate. It was quiet. Watching. Learning. Daniel saw the color drain from her face. "What is it?" he asked. She swallowed hard. It was never hungry. He frowned. "What do you mean?" It was contained. That night, the excavation site was closed off completely. But Emily couldn't sleep. The house across Blackwater Lake felt peaceful again. Normal. But the land beneath it was not. She sat at the kitchen table with the old police report spread before her. She understood something now that she hadn't before. The presence beneath the lake hadn't needed to hunt. It had needed pressure, weight, water, containment. When the settlers discovered it generations ago, they hadn't worshipped it. They hadn't summoned it. They had feared it. And they had done the only thing they could. They buried it, drowned it, and over time, people forgot why. Daniel placed a mug of coffee in front of her. "So what happens now?" he asked. She stared at the surface of the liquid. Dark. Reflective. What happens when you remove the lid from something buried? He didn't answer. Because he knew. The following morning, town officials made an announcement. The excavation would be halted. Funding issues. Safety concerns. The staircase would be filled in. The exposed foundation resubmerged. Blackwater Lake would remain. Artificial barriers would stabilize the shoreline. Officially, it was about preservation. Unofficially, someone higher up had seen the camera footage and understood enough to be afraid. Emily stood on the dock at sunset one final time. The lake reflected gold and orange light peacefully. Children laughed in the distance. A dog backed. Life moved forward. Daniel stepped beside her. "It's staying buried," he said. "For now," she replied. He studied her carefully. "Do you still feel it?" She closed her eyes. Searched. There was no tether. No pull. No whisper, but far below. Past soil, past stone, past time, there was something, not awake, not reaching, but present, like a heartbeat so slow it could take centuries between pulses. I don't feel connected, she said finally, but I feel aware. Daniel exhaled slowly. Is that enough? She looked out across Blackwater Lake. Once a wound, once a doorway, now simply water again. For now, she whispered. The wind shifted gently. The surface rippled. Not violently, not unnaturally, just water responding to air. Normal. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, for the briefest second, the reflection on the lake's surface showed something impossible. Not the sky, not the trees, but a faint circular pattern beneath, like carvings far below the sediment. Unmoving, waiting. Emily did not look away. She did not panic. She did not feel fear, because some things are not meant to be destroyed, only contained. And containment requires remembering. The house across Blackwater Lake ends not with a scream, but with silence. The lake is calm. The town is safe. The door is sealed. But beneath the earth, something ancient remains buried. And sometimes, what was buried stays that way only as long as we choose not to dig. Story 2. The train was never supposed to stop at Ridgewood Station. At least, that's what the schedule said. But at 11:58 p.m., the red signal light flickered, and the Midnight Express slowed down anyway. Inside car 7, passengers barely noticed. Some were asleep. Some were scrolling their phones. A few stared out the windows at the dark countryside rushing past. No one expected anything unusual. Until the train stopped. Not gradually. Not at a station. Just stopped. The conductor's voice crackled over the intercom. Technical delay. Please remain seated. That was the official explanation. But something felt wrong. Because outside the windows, there was no platform, no lights, no buildings, just forest. Dense, silent, and yet, the train doors opened. At first, no one moved. Then a man near the aisle stood up. I think we're at the wrong stop, he muttered. He stepped toward the door, and the moment he did, cold air rushed in. Not normal night air. Something heavier, damp, like underground water. The man hesitated, then stepped outside. The door remained open. The forest was closer than it should have been. Too close. The train had stopped in the middle of the trees. No station. No tracks visible ahead. Just darkness. And behind the train, the tracks were gone. Inside car 7, a young woman named Clara Hayes felt her stomach drop. She had boarded the train in the city, heading home after a late shift at the hospital. She checked her phone. No signal. That wasn't unusual in rural areas. But the GPS map was strange. The train icon wasn't on any known track. It was sitting in a blank space, as if the route itself didn't exist. Clara leaned toward the window, and froze. Because the forest wasn't static. It was moving. Not trees. The shadows between them. Shifting. Breathing. She blinked, and the movement stopped. A loud metallic bang echoed from outside. Passengers gasped. Someone screamed. The man who had stepped off the train was now running alongside it, pounding on the glass. His face was pale with terror. "Let me back in," he shouted. The train doors remained open, but he couldn't re-enter. Not from where he was standing. The ground beneath his feet was no longer solid. It looked like dirt, but when he stepped back toward the train, he sank slightly, like soft soil, or something deeper. The train's interior lights flickered. Once, twice, then steadied. Clara noticed something else. The emergency exit signs had changed. They were no longer pointing toward the front or rear of the train. They were pointing downward. A deep vibration rolled through the floor. Not from movement. From below. The train began to tilt. Just slightly. Passengers grabbed seats in panic. Outside, the forest disappeared into mist. The ground itself seemed to rise, or the train seemed to sink. It was hard to tell which. Clara's heartbeat pounded in her ears. The man outside was now waist-deep in soil. He was not sinking slowly. He was being pulled by something beneath the surface. He screamed once, then vanished. The ground closed over him. Smooth. Quiet. as if nothing had happened. The train lights went out. Total darkness swallowed car 7. Silence followed. Not even breathing sounded loud anymore. Then, a new sound. From beneath the floor. Knocking. Slow. Deliberate. Clara froze. It wasn't random. It was rhythmic. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. The pattern repeated. Passengers whispered in fear. What is that? Is it mechanical? No train makes that sound. The knocking grew louder. Closer. The floor panels near the center aisle began to vibrate. Then, a seam appeared. Not in the train. In the air. Like a crack forming in reality. Through it, Clara saw something impossible. Another space. Not forest. Not tunnel. A vast underground chamber stretching infinitely in all directions. And in the center of that chamber, the train itself. Surrounded by darkness. The car they were in existed in 2 places at once. Above ground. And below. Clara stumbled back. What is this? Someone whispered. The intercom crackled. But the conductor's voice was gone. Instead, a different voice came through the speakers. Calm. And distorted. You have arrived. The passengers began shouting. Doors tried. Windows pounded. But outside, there was no escape. The train was no longer on tracks. It was suspended in something vast. The floor seam widened, and a hand emerged. Not human. Long. Thin. Pale. It gripped the edge of the aisle. More hands followed, climbing upward. From beneath the train, Clara backed toward the rear door. Her mind raced. This wasn't a derailment. This wasn't a technical failure. The train hadn't stopped. It had been taken. The forest. The ground. The tracks disappearing. It wasn't accident. It was transition. The knocking stopped, replaced by silence. Then the voice returned. You are not the first. The lights flickered on again. But they were dim. Emergency power. Clara looked around. Half the passengers were gone. Not missing from seats. Gone from existence. Their seats were empty. No signs of struggle. Just absence. As if they had never boarded. The train car had fewer people than before. Reality itself was thinning. The hands below withdrew. The crack in the air sealed slightly. But not completely. And Clara realized something horrifying. The train was not being attacked. It was being sorted. The voice spoke again. Those who do not belong will be removed. Clara felt cold. Removed. She looked around desperately. Some passengers were panicking. Others were frozen in shock. A child began crying. Clara knelt beside him. It's going to be okay, she whispered. She didn't believe it, but she said it anyway. The floor vibrated once more. This time, only beneath certain seats. And one by one, those seats went empty. No bodies falling. No screams. Just disappearance. As if something beneath had selected them. Clara looked down. The seam in the floor was directly under her feet now. The voice returned. You are not scheduled. Her breath caught. The ticket in her pocket felt heavy. She pulled it out. Departure city. Arrival city. Midnight Express. Nothing unusual. But when she looked closer, the route printed on the ticket was changing. The destination was no longer listed. Instead, it read, Transfer complete. Clara understood. This wasn't a train to a place. It was a bridge. And some passengers were not meant to cross. The seam in the floor opened fully. Darkness below stretched upward. The voice spoke one final time. You may stay. Clara looked around. Only a handful of passengers remained. The child. An elderly woman. 2 others. Everyone else had vanished. The train began moving again. Slowly. Forward. But there were still no tracks visible outside. The forest had returned. The platform was gone. As if nothing had happened. Clara sat back down, trembling. The lights stabilized. The emergency system returned to normal. The conductor reappeared over the intercom. We apologize for the delay. We will now continue to our destination. His voice sounded human again. But Clara noticed something. He did not mention Ridgewood Station. He did not apologize for the stop. And no one else seemed to remember it. Passengers were checking phones. Talking calmly. As if no seats had emptied. As if no hands had emerged from beneath the floor. Clara looked around slowly. The empty seats were still empty. But no one reacted. No one noticed. It was as though the missing passengers had never existed. Except her. She remembered. The train resumed speed. Outside, the forest blurred past. Normal again. But Clara knew the truth. The midnight train did not travel on rails. It traveled between places. Between realities. And tonight, it had delivered its cargo. She looked at the floor seam one last time. It was gone. Sealed. But beneath it, something had awakened. And it knew her name. The train reached its destination at 1:17 a.m. At least, that's what the arrival board said. Clara stepped onto the platform slowly, expecting chaos. Expecting news crews. Police. Questions. But the station was ordinary. Quiet. Well lit. Completely normal. Ridgewood Central. Exactly where the train was supposed to be. She turned back toward Car 7. The Midnight Express sat still on the track, doors closed, engines humming softly, like nothing had happened. Passengers were disembarking calmly, talking, checking watches, complaining about delays. No panic, no confusion. Clara stared at them. They didn't look like people who had just lost half their seats to something beneath reality. She grabbed the sleeve of the elderly woman who had sat near her. "Did you see it?" Clara asked. The woman frowned gently. "See what, dear?" Clara felt her stomach sink. The floor. The hands. The woman gave her a sympathetic smile. "You must be exhausted." Clara stepped back slowly. No one remembered. Not a single person. Except her. She walked into the station building. The electronic dispatcher board flickered once as she passed. Then stabilized. She paused. Looked back. For a split second. The board displayed a second line beneath the schedule. Not visible to others. Only to her. Midnight Express, status, active. Under that, cargo reduced. Her breath caught. Cargo. Not passengers. Cargo. Clara's reflection in the glass looked pale under fluorescent lights. She leaned closer. The board flickered again. Now it read. Remaining transfers, 4. 4. She felt her heart hammer. She counted. The child. The elderly woman. 2 others. 4. The train doors opened again behind her. A mechanical chime echoed through the platform. Clara turned slowly. The conductor stood at the exit. His uniform neat. His face unreadable. He looked directly at her. And for the first time, he smiled. "Miss Hayes," he said calmly. Her blood ran cold. "You're not on the manifest." She took a step back. "Who are you?" He tilted his head slightly. "Operations." That was not an answer. It was a designation. Passengers continued walking past them, unaware. The conductor stepped closer. "You were not removed." Clara swallowed. "Because I belong." His smile faded. "Because the system cannot classify you." Her mind raced. What system? He gestured subtly toward the train. "Transit protocols are automatic. Selection is algorithmic." Her pulse spiked. "Algorithmic." "Yes." He paused. "And anomalies are retained." Clara stared at him. "You're saying I'm a glitch?" He didn't deny it. Instead, he spoke softly. "The event at Ridgewood was not scheduled." Her breath hitched. "So you know what happened?" "I monitor all transfers." "Transfers of what?" His eyes met hers directly. "Interference." The station lights flickered briefly. Just once. The conductor's expression tightened slightly. "Your presence altered the balance." Clara felt cold. "What balance?" He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked back into the train. The doors closed. The train began moving again. But this time, Clara saw something new. Under the carriage, a faint glow. A thin line of light running the length of the train. Like circuitry. Not mechanical tracks. Energy. The train wasn't powered by fuel. It was powered by something else. And when it moved, the air around it shimmered. Reality bending slightly. She realized then, the Midnight Express was not a train. It was a containment vessel. A moving seal. And when it stopped at Ridgewood, something had slipped through. Because of her. Clara's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated. Answered. Silence. Then a distorted voice. You closed one door. Her breath froze. The voice wasn't from the lake. Not from the train speakers. This one felt closer. Inside her ear. You think that was the only one? Her stomach twisted. Who is this? A pause. Then, manifest control. The line cut. Manifest. The train conductor had used that word. Clara looked toward the departing train. It was already accelerating into the night. But this time, 4 passengers were missing. She knew that for certain. She felt it, like weight removed from the world. Back inside the station lobby, Clara approached the information desk. A clerk looked up politely. How can I help you? Clara leaned in. Has the Midnight Express always run this route? The clerk blinked. Of course. Through Ridgewood. The clerk frowned. Ridgewood doesn't have a station. Clara felt her legs weaken slightly. Yes, it does. It stopped there tonight. The clerk checked the system screen. No record of any stop outside scheduled stations. Clara's voice dropped. I was there. The clerk studied her carefully, then smiled gently. You may want to get some rest. Clara left the building in silence. Outside, the tracks gleamed under streetlights. She walked along the platform edge until she reached the far end, where the train had slowed earlier. She stood exactly where it had stopped, closed her eyes, and listened. For a moment, she heard it, very faint, the 3-knock rhythm, from far below, not from beneath the station, but from somewhere deeper. The system was still active, still sorting, still transferring, and she was still inside it. Clara opened her eyes slowly. On the gravel near the tracks, a small metallic object lay half-buried. She crouched, picked it up. It was a train identification tag, stamped with a serial number. But beneath the number, engraved faintly in microscopic text, Unit 7, Containment Class. Her breath stopped. Containment. The train wasn't transporting passengers. It was transporting threats. And tonight, it had classified her as something different. Not cargo, not interference, something else. The tag flickered once in her hand, then went dark. Clara looked back at the station. The Midnight Express had vanished into the distance. But she knew one thing now. It would return. And next time, it would not stop accidentally. It would stop for her. The train came back 3 nights later. Clara knew it would. Not because anyone told her. Because the station lights flickered exactly at 11:57 p.m. The same pattern. 3 short pulses, then steady. She stood alone on platform 4. No one else had noticed anything unusual. To everyone else, the Midnight Express was just another delayed commuter train. But Clara wasn't everyone else. She held the metallic tag in her pocket. Unit 7, Containment Class. The words felt heavier every time she read them. At 11:59 p.m., she heard it. The distant hum. Low. Growing. Not from the tracks. From the air. The platform speakers crackled softly. Then a voice. Calm. Midnight Express arriving. The train rolled into view. Doors closed. Windows dark. No sign of the earlier chaos. It stopped precisely where it had before. This time, it didn't hesitate. The doors opened immediately. Clara felt every instinct in her body scream not to board. But she stepped forward anyway. She needed answers. Inside car 7, the lighting was different. Brighter. Sterile. And there were fewer passengers. She counted carefully. Only 12. The previous night had been full. Now, most seats were empty. Not recently vacated. Empty as if never used. The elderly woman was gone. The child was gone. 2 others missing. Exactly 4. Clara's heartbeat quickened. The system had completed its transfer cycle. She sat down slowly. The conductor walked down the aisle. He stopped beside her seat. You returned, he said. It wasn't a question. Clara met his eyes. What happens to the ones removed? He studied her carefully. They are redirected. Where? He paused. That depends on classification. She held up the tag. His gaze dropped to it instantly. For the first time, his expression shifted. Not fear. Concern. You took that from the platform? Yes. That item was not meant for passengers. Then what am I? The train lights flickered slightly. The conductor straightened. "You are an anomaly." Clara didn't look away. "That's not an answer." He leaned closer. "In transit systems like this, stability is critical. When interference occurs, containment protocols activate." "Containment of what?" The train lurched slightly as it accelerated. Outside the windows, the station disappeared. But instead of countryside, there was only white. Blank space. No landscape. No sky. Just emptiness. Clara's stomach dropped. "We're not on Earth anymore," she whispered. The conductor didn't respond. Instead, he pressed a small device on his wrist. The train doors locked audibly. Emergency lighting activated. Soft blue. "You should not have returned," he said quietly. "Why?" "Because now you are inside the route." Her breath caught. "What does that mean?" He looked toward the front of the train. The Midnight Express does not move through geography. The lights dimmed. It moves through unstable regions. Clara's mind struggled to process that. Unstable. Reality fractures. She felt her pulse pounding in her ears. And Ridgewood. The conductor hesitated. It was one. The white outside the windows rippled. Like fabric being stretched. Clara leaned forward. Was it the only one? He did not answer immediately. Which was answer enough. A low vibration traveled through the floor again. But this time, it wasn't beneath the train. It was ahead. The blank white outside began to thin. Shapes emerged. Not forest. Not station. Structures. Massive. Geometric. Floating in darkness. The train was entering something enormous. Clara stood up slowly. "What is that?" The conductor faced forward. "Core sector." The train slowed. The shapes outside were enormous frameworks of light. Intersecting lines. Rotating grids. It looked like infrastructure, but not built for people. Built for containment. The train entered a vast circular chamber. At its center, a sphere of shimmering energy, encased in layers of rotating rings. The same pattern she had seen in the lake chamber. Circles inside circles. The train circled the sphere once before stopping. The conductor turned to her. "This is where transfers are evaluated." Clara felt cold. Evaluated for what? He didn't answer. Instead, the remaining passengers began standing simultaneously. Not panicked. Not confused. Their eyes were glassy. Like sleepwalkers. The train doors opened. Outside was not ground. It was a platform of light extending toward the sphere. The passengers walked forward in a single line. Clara watched in horror. "They're not disappearing," she realized. "They are being integrated." The conductor nodded slightly. "Yes." Integrated into what? The sphere pulsed faintly. Inside it, Clara saw movement. Shadows shifting. Patterns forming. She suddenly understood. The train was not removing people randomly. It was filtering disruptions. And the filtered entities were added to stabilize the system. Energy redistribution. Reality reinforcement. Ridgewood had been a fracture point. Something beneath it had tried to breach. The train had responded. But because of her interference, the system flagged her as unresolved. Now she was inside the core network. The conductor stepped closer. "You altered containment balance," he said quietly. Clara swallowed. "What happens now?" The sphere glowed brighter. "Classification update is required." Her pulse spiked. "Update to what?" The conductor looked at her steadily. "Core asset." Her blood ran cold. The platform outside extended toward her seat. Not physically, but visually, as if inviting her to step out. The sphere pulsed again. And she felt it. A connection. Not hostile. Not hungry. But vast. The same feeling she'd sensed beneath the lake. But cleaner. Structured. She realized something shocking. The train system wasn't evil. It was ancient infrastructure, designed to contain anomalies. But over time, its purpose had drifted. It no longer distinguished between threat and interference. Anyone who disrupted balance risked integration. The sphere emitted a soft tone. The conductor spoke quietly. "You have two options." Clara held her breath. "Classification as asset will stabilize you within the system. You will cease independent existence." Her throat tightened. "And the other?" He paused. Return to origin point. Her eyes widened. You can send me back. Yes. To Ridgewood. Yes. The sphere flickered. Clara looked at it carefully, then back at the conductor. If I go back, you will retain memory. She felt tears prick her eyes. And the system will reset local anomaly. Her heart pounded. If I stay, you become part of the core. Silence filled the chamber. The passengers were already stepping into the sphere's light, one by one, disappearing into integration. Clara looked toward the empty seats. She understood now. The midnight train was not collecting victims, preventing collapse. And tonight, she had triggered a deeper protocol. The sphere pulsed once more. The conductor extended his hand. Decision required. Clara closed her eyes. She thought about Ridgewood, about the lake, about reality tearing open, about the hands beneath the floor, about balance. She opened her eyes and stepped backward. I choose to return. The sphere dimmed slightly. The conductor nodded. Confirmed. The chamber lights shifted. The train began reversing direction. The white void outside returned. Clara felt pressure building around her. Not painful, just transition. The conductor spoke one final time. You altered the system. Yes. That is rare. She met his gaze. What happens now? He allowed the faintest hint of a smile. Now the system adapts. The lights flashed. The train dissolved into white. Clara gasped. She was standing on platform 4 again. Midnight breeze. Normal station lights. The train nowhere in sight. Her pocket felt lighter. The tag was gone. She checked her phone. Signal restored. Time displayed, 12:03 a.m. But the departure board read, Midnight Express, schedule complete. No record of alternate stops. No anomaly warnings. Nothing. She exhaled slowly. Somewhere far beyond reality. The core sphere pulsed once, then stabilized. Ridgewood remained intact. The lake remained calm. And the Midnight Express continued its route. But now, it had learned something new. Clara didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the sphere. Circles inside circles. The rotating rings. The passengers dissolving into light. Core asset. The words echoed in her mind. By sunrise, she had made a decision. If the system adapted, then she needed to understand it. She returned to Ridgewood Central Station the next evening. Not to board, just to observe. Platform 4 was quiet. The departure board displayed normal routes. No mention of anomalies. No trace of the midnight event. Clara walked slowly toward the station control office. Inside, technicians monitored screens showing train schedules, track data, and power grids. Everything looked standard. She approached the front desk. I'd like access to historical route logs, she said calmly. The clerk typed briefly. Purpose? I'm researching transit patterns. The clerk smiled politely. Public records are available online. Clara leaned closer. I need system-level data. The smile faded slightly. Are you with operations? No. A pause. Then the clerk nodded toward a security door. Supervisor's office. Supervisor Hale was older than she expected. Gray hair. Sharp eyes. He studied her carefully when she entered. You were on the Midnight Express, he said immediately. Clara froze. Yes. You triggered a containment event. Her pulse quickened. So you do know. He gestured for her to sit. Sit down. She obeyed. The room was quiet except for distant train movement. Hale folded his hands. The Midnight Express is not a normal railway. I know. He raised an eyebrow slightly. You know part of it. Clara took a breath. I saw the core. His expression changed subtly. You access sector visualization. I didn't mean to. That seemed to interest him. He leaned back slowly. Then the system flagged you correctly. Flagged me as what? Adaptive interference. She frowned. What does that mean? Hale stood and walked to a wall display. He activated it. A schematic appeared. Not a city map. Not tracks. A network. Concentric circles. Branches extending outward. Some nodes glowing green. Others faintly red. Each node represents a geographic instability zone. he explained. Instability. Places where reality thins. Clara felt cold. Ridgewood was one. Yes. And the lake? Yes. She stared at the glowing diagram. How many more? Hale hesitated. Currently monitored, 17. Her breath caught. And the train goes to all of them. It circulates continuously. Why not fix them directly? He looked at her steadily. Containment is safer than eradication. The words landed heavily. She understood. If the system tried to destroy whatever caused instability, it could trigger collapse. Better to isolate, stabilize, redirect anomalies into the core, balance through absorption. Clara looked at the schematic again. The core sphere she had seen was labeled in small text. Primary stabilizer. She turned back to Hale. But the train stopped at Ridgewood. Yes. Why? He studied her carefully. Because something attempted breach. She nodded slowly. And I was the variable. Yes. The room felt smaller. So what am I now? Hale's answer was measured. You are logged. Her stomach tightened. Logged. You are no longer classified as anomaly. Relief flickered through her. Then what am I? He met her gaze directly. Observer status. She blinked. What does that mean? It means the system recognizes you as capable of understanding without destabilizing. She absorbed that slowly. So I can see it. Yes. But I don't trigger it. Correct. Clara exhaled. And if instability happens again? Hale's eyes darkened slightly. Then the Midnight Express responds. That night, Clara didn't board the train. Instead, she stood on platform 4 watching it arrive. The doors opened. Passengers entered and exited normally. No strange seams. No flickering lights. From the outside, it was just transportation. She watched carefully, waiting for signs of distortion. But nothing occurred. The train departed smoothly, as if Ridgewood had never happened. But at 1:42 a.m., something changed. Clara felt it before she saw it. A subtle vibration under the station floor. Not from tracks. From deeper. The departure board flickered. Not with train information, but with a new line. Node alert, Sector 12. Her heart rate increased. Sector 12. She checked the wall schematic in Hale's office earlier. Sector 12 was near Coastal City. Not far. The board continued updating. Containment breach detected. Clara rushed back to Hale's office. He was already watching the same alert. Another instability, she said. Yes. Does the train go there? He nodded. Immediately. As if on cue, the Midnight Express reappeared on track 1. No announcement. No delay. Doors opened. The conductor stood inside. Waiting. Clara stepped closer. He saw her instantly. Their eyes met. He gave the slightest nod. Acknowledgement. Not surprise. Not warning. Recognition. She approached the train without boarding. Sector 12, she asked calmly. He replied softly. Yes. Is it serious? He paused. Yes. She studied him carefully. Do you need interference again? His expression remained composed. Not yet. The doors closed. The train departed into the night. Clara stood alone on the platform, watching it vanish. She realized something profound. The system no longer saw her as threat. It saw her as potential collaborator, observer. That meant something important. The Midnight Express wasn't hiding. It was operating, quietly, continuously, holding the seams of reality together. And now, she was part of its awareness. The departure board flickered once more. Not alert, not warning, just a subtle message. Welcome, observer. Clara felt a strange mixture of fear and responsibility. She had stepped into something enormous, something ancient, not evil, not benevolent, just necessary. The train system existed to keep the world intact, and she had learned how it worked. Which meant, if something stronger ever tried to breach again, she would see it first. The Midnight Express hummed in the distance, continuing its route, circling the instability zones, maintaining balance. Clara looked up at the night sky. For the first time since Ridgewood, she felt grounded, not hunted, not classified, just aware. The system had adapted. And so had she. Clara felt it before the alert finished loading. A pressure shift, like the air had tightened around the station. At 1:43 a.m., the departure board changed again. Sector 12, critical. The words glowed red. Not flashing. Stable. Which meant it was serious. Clara hurried back to Supervisor Hale's office. He was already on a live feed. The wall screen displayed Sector 12's map. Coastal city. Harbor district. And at its center, a pulsing distortion. Not visible to the public, but clearly marked on the system. Hale didn't look up. It's expanding, he said quietly. Clara stepped closer. The distortion wasn't random. It was structured. A spiral. Rotating outward. Is that like Ridgewood? She asked. No, Hale replied. This is different. Her stomach tightened. How? He zoomed in. At the center of the spiral was a single node, and it was glowing intensely. Ridgewood was a surface fracture, he explained. This is a core-level intrusion. Clara swallowed. Core? Yes. Her mind flashed back to the sphere, the primary stabilizer. If this reaches threshold, Hale continued, it could create a secondary containment network. Clara's eyes widened. You mean another system? He nodded. Exactly. The Midnight Express was the only known stabilizer for reality fractures in this region. If a new breach formed independently, it could develop its own containment structure, but not necessarily aligned with the train's protocols. Clara felt cold. What causes something like that? Hale hesitated. Sometimes anomalies don't originate naturally. She frowned. Then what? He looked at her carefully. Intent. Her pulse slowed. Someone is trying to create a fracture. Yes. She exhaled slowly. Why? Hale didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned the screen to show energy readings. The spiral distortion wasn't random. It was being fed. Power lines. Industrial output. Urban infrastructure. It was being amplified deliberately. Clara's breath caught. It's being built. Hale nodded once. Correct. The Midnight Express reappeared at Platform 1 without announcement. The lights along the tracks dimmed slightly as it approached. Clara walked toward it. The conductor stood at the door again, waiting. This time, he spoke first. Sector 12 requires assessment. Clara nodded. I saw the readings. His eyes remained steady. Breach growth rate exceeds stabilization capacity. Her stomach tightened. What does that mean? It means intervention is necessary. The doors remained open. Clara hesitated. I'm not scheduled. He gave a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Observers are permitted during emergency protocol. That was new. She stepped inside. Car 7 was different this time. The lighting was brighter. Screens had appeared along the walls. Real-time data streaming across them. Sector 12's spiral distortion filled every monitor. Passengers sat calmly, but Clara noticed something strange. There were fewer of them, and they all wore identical wristbands. System tags. She looked down at her own wrist. There was nothing there. The conductor approached her. You are untagged, he said. Yes. That will remain. She nodded. Am I participating? Only visually. The train began moving. But unlike before, the windows did not show white void. They showed transit lines. The Midnight Express was entering its emergency route. Within minutes, they arrived. Sector 12 looked normal from the outside. Buildings, harbor lights, calm water. But above the district, the air shimmered faintly. Clara stepped off the train with the conductor. Other crew members disembarked too. For the first time, she saw them clearly. They weren't passengers. They were system operators, each carrying small devices. Energy readers, stabilization units. The spiral distortion was visible now in the night sky. A faint rotating pattern, almost beautiful, but unstable. The conductor spoke calmly. Breach origin located. Clara followed his gaze. Toward a warehouse near the harbor. Its roof emitted a low-frequency pulse. The spiral was centered above it. They're generating it there, she asked. Yes. Who? The conductor didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, human interference detected. Her stomach tightened. They entered the warehouse carefully. Inside, the air felt dense. Machines lined the walls. Not industrial. Experimental. In the center of the room stood a large circular device. Rotating rings. Power conduits feeding into it. Clara recognized the pattern immediately. Circles inside circles. The same symbol. But inverted. Instead of containing, it was expanding. A technician turned abruptly when they entered. Shock flashed across his face. The conductor spoke firmly. "Cease operation." The technician stepped back. "You're too late," he said quietly. Clara's eyes moved to the device. The spiral distortion above Sector 12 pulsed brighter. "It's not an accident," she realized. "It's intentional." The technician looked at her. "We're trying to replicate your system." Her breath stopped. "What?" "The Midnight Express stabilizes fractures. We're building a distributed model." Clara's mind raced. "You're creating another containment network." "Yes. But without oversight." He hesitated. "Yes." The conductor stepped forward. "That is an authorized replication." The technician looked defensive. "The world is unstable. We need redundancy." Clara stared at the device. It wasn't stabilizing. It was amplifying. If it activated fully, it would create a second core, competing with the train's stabilizer. Two containment systems operating simultaneously. That could tear reality apart. The spiral outside intensified. Clara turned to the conductor. "Can the train stop it?" "Yes." "How?" He looked at her directly. "Integration." Her heart pounded. "Like before?" "Yes. But this time, on a larger scale." She understood immediately. The Midnight Express could absorb the distortion. But doing so would require expanding the core. And that meant risk. The conductor stepped toward the device. Operators moved quickly. The train's emergency crew activated stabilizer units. Clara watched as the spiral above grew unstable. The warehouse lights flickered violently, reality bending slightly around the circular machine. The technician shouted, "Shut it down." But it was too late. The device reached full rotation. A shockwave erupted outward. The spiral in the sky became visible to everyone in Sector 12. People on the streets looked up in confusion. Clara felt the ground tremble. The Midnight Express was already responding. It began materializing above the warehouse. Not on tracks, directly in midair. The core sphere's light shimmered through its structure. The conductor spoke calmly. Integration commencing. Clara felt the air distort around her. The spiral above the city was being drawn inward, into the train's car field. Slowly, the warehouse device cracked under the pressure. The technician fell to his knees. "It was meant to help," he whispered. Clara looked at him. "Redundancy isn't always safety," she said quietly. The spiral contracted. The Midnight Express absorbed it layer by layer. Energy flowed visibly along its exterior lines. Into the core stabilizer. The sphere pulsed brightly, then steadied. The distortion above Sector 12 collapsed. The sky returned to normal. The warehouse device powered down completely. Silence followed. Clara felt the pressure in her chest ease. The conductor approached her. "Breach neutralized." She nodded slowly. "What happens to the replication system?" "It will remain offline." She looked around. And the people? No integration required. She exhaled in relief. The train began descending back toward the tracks. Sector 12 was stable. Again, Clara realized something important. The Midnight Express didn't just respond to fractures. It prevented competing systems from forming. It maintained singular stability. No duplicates. No parallel containment. One network only. She looked at the conductor. "What happens if someone tries again?" He met her gaze calmly. "Then we respond again." The train reappeared on ground tracks. Passengers boarded normally. The emergency crew returned inside. Clara stepped back onto platform 4 as the train prepared to depart. The conductor paused at the door. "You have assisted system integrity," he said. Clara nodded. "It's my responsibility." He regarded her thoughtfully. "Observer status upgraded." She raised an eyebrow. "To what?" He allowed a small smile. "Guardian adjacent." Before she could respond, the doors closed. The Midnight Express departed into the night. Clara remained on the platform, watching it disappear. This time, she didn't feel fear. She felt clarity. The system wasn't perfect, but it was necessary. And now she understood its purpose. The Midnight Express was not a mystery. It was maintenance, and she had become part of its awareness. The departure board flickered once, then displayed. Sector 12, stable. Below it, network integrity restored. Clara exhaled slowly. The train hummed in the distance, continuing its endless route. Watching, balancing, containing. 3 days passed without incident. No alerts, no distortions, no emergency routes. Sector 12 remained stable. The departure board showed normal schedules. The Midnight Express arrived and departed like an ordinary train. To everyone else, it was just transit. But Clara noticed something new. The system wasn't resting. It was scanning. Subtle data pulses moved across the station monitors at irregular intervals. Not alarms, not warnings, just queries. Hale noticed it too. He called Clara into his office early one morning. "Look at this," he said. The screen displayed network activity. The Midnight Express car was sending outbound pings. Not toward instability zones. Toward something else. Clara frowned. What is it searching for? Hale adjusted the display. The pings were spreading outward in a widening pattern. Like sonar. "We didn't program that behavior," he said quietly. Clara felt a cold awareness settle in her chest. "Is it malfunctioning?" Hale hesitated. "Not exactly." He zoomed in on the signal source. It originated from the core sphere. The stabilizer. Clara's pulse quickened. Why would the core scan externally? Hale turned to her slowly. Because it may have detected a pattern. Her stomach tightened. What pattern? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he played a recording. It was from Sector 12, the spiral breach before containment. The audio captured faint background noise. Clara listened carefully. At first, static. Then something else. A low rhythmic tone. Not mechanical. Not environmental. Structured. 3 pulses. Pause. 3 pulses. Clara's eyes widened. That's the same rhythm from Ridgewood. Hale nodded once. Yes. Her mind raced. Is it the same source? We believe so. The signal had originated beneath Sector 12. The replication device had amplified it. The Midnight Express had absorbed it. But now, the core was scanning for the original emitter. Clara felt uneasy. Where did the rhythm come from originally? Hale looked at her carefully. We don't know. Silence filled the room. But we suspect, he added slowly, it is not limited to one location. Clara understood immediately. The spiral breach at Sector 12 wasn't isolated. It was connected, and the core stabilizer had noticed. That night, the Midnight Express arrived unusually early. 11:32 p.m. The conductor stepped off the train and walked directly toward Clara. I need your presence, he said calmly. She nodded. What's happening? The station lights dimmed slightly. External signal amplification detected. Her pulse quickened. From where? He met her eyes. Multiple sectors. Her breath caught. Simultaneously. Yes. That was new. The system display behind them lit up. Several nodes across the network were glowing faint red. Not spirals, but smaller distortions. Scattered. Coordinated. Clara stared at the map. It's not random. The conductor nodded. It appears synchronized. Hale joined them. What does that mean? The conductor answered. It indicates intentional external interference. Clara felt a chill. Someone is triggering multiple instability points at once. Yes. Hale frowned. That's impossible without access to the system. Clara's thoughts moved quickly. Unless the interference is independent. The conductor turned slightly toward her. Explain. She gestured toward the schematic. What if someone studied the Midnight Express model? Hale's expression darkened. Replication attempts. Yes, Clara said, but not to stabilize. To stress test. The conductor's eyes narrowed slightly. If instability is triggered simultaneously in multiple sectors, Clara continued, they could analyze how the train responds. Hale went still. You're suggesting this is a probe? Yes. The system display shifted again. New data streamed across the screen. The Midnight Express car was responding. Not reacting blindly, but prioritizing. It highlighted one node. Sector 4. It pulsed brighter than the others. Clara leaned closer. Why that one? The conductor studied the screen. Sector 4 shows highest resonance. What does that mean? It may be the primary signal origin. Her breath slowed. So the synchronized distortions are being controlled from there. Yes. Hale turned sharply. We need to mobilize immediately. The conductor nodded. Agreed. The Midnight Express doors opened. Emergency lighting activated. Clara stepped inside without hesitation. This time, she wasn't just observing. She was part of the response. Inside Car 7, the atmosphere felt different. Focused. Crew members stood at stations, monitoring screens. Stabilization units active. Clara sat near the front this time, close to the core interface. The train accelerated smoothly. But outside the windows, instead of white void or normal landscape, there were flashes, quick glimpses of instability zones as they passed. Ridgewood, Sector 12, other unmarked areas. Each flickered briefly as the train moved by. The system was scanning in real time. The conductor approached her. Your anomaly experience may assist analysis. She nodded. What do you need? He extended a small interface device. Touch this. She hesitated only briefly, then placed her hand on it. Immediately, the core sphere's light shifted. The system display zoomed in on Sector 4. Clara felt something unexpected. A faint resonance. Not threatening. Familiar. Her eyes widened. It's not random, she whispered. What isn't? The signal. The conductor leaned closer. It aligns with the rhythm from Ridgewood. Hale's voice came over the train communication system. Signal triangulation confirms centralized origin. Clara stared at the screen. The distortions weren't isolated incidents. They formed a pattern. When connected, they resembled the same circle motif. Circles inside circles. The containment symbol. But inverted again. Her heart raced. They are trying to mirror the system, she said. The conductor nodded slowly. Yes. Why? Hale responded through comms. To create a parallel stabilizer. Clara felt cold. They want two cores. Silence followed. The conductor spoke calmly. That would fragment control. And destabilize both networks, Clara added. The train slowed. They were approaching Sector 4. Outside the windows, the landscape blurred, then shifted. The Midnight Express entered the sector's boundary. Immediately, the core sphere pulsed brighter. It detected something. Clara felt it. The resonance increased. The signal wasn't just present. It was responding to the train's arrival. As if aware, Hale's voice sharpened. Signal spike confirmed. Clara stared at the display. The distortions across multiple sectors began fading. Except Sector 4. It intensified. The conductor's expression hardened slightly. This is the origin. The train decelerated. Clara looked toward the front. What happens now? The conductor met her gaze. Assessment. The doors opened. Outside was a quiet industrial district. No obvious anomalies visible. But the system sensors showed concentrated energy in a building ahead. Clara stepped off the train. The Midnight Express remained ready behind her. The conductor walked beside her. Together, they approached the structure. Inside, they would find the source of the synchronized signal. And whatever was attempting to replicate the Midnight Express was about to learn the system did not tolerate competition. Clara felt steady, not afraid, ready. The Midnight Express hummed behind her, watching, waiting, adapting. The building in Sector 4 looked ordinary. Concrete exterior, no signage. Industrial windows covered with reflective film. But the Midnight Express sensors didn't lie. Energy levels were spiking from inside. Clara stood beside the conductor as the train remained idling behind them, its core sphere glowing faintly through the windows. The system was focused. Hunting. The conductor gestured toward the entrance. Signal intensity increases at proximity. Clara nodded. So whatever's inside reacts to the train. Yes. That meant one thing. It knew they were there. They entered cautiously. Inside, the warehouse was filled with equipment. But unlike Sector 12, this wasn't amplification machinery. It was monitoring hardware. Walls lined with screens, all displaying the same image. The Midnight Express network map. Clara felt her stomach tighten. Someone had built a live copy of the system display. The conductor stopped moving. His eyes narrowed slightly. This is an authorized access architecture. Clara stepped closer to the screens. The map wasn't static. It was active. And at the center, a new node glowed. Not part of the official network. A 13th sector, labeled simply, Origin. Clara's breath slowed. That wasn't on Hale's map. No, the conductor confirmed. The screens flickered. Then a voice echoed through hidden speakers. Calm. Familiar. Clara froze. It was the same tone as the core system, but slightly distorted. Welcome. The conductor remained motionless. Identify yourself, he said firmly. A pause. Then, I am continuity. Clara's pulse quickened. The lights dimmed. On the central screen, a spiral appeared. Not red, not unstable, perfectly symmetrical. The same pattern as containment, but reversed orientation. Clara stepped forward. This is the replication system. The conductor nodded slightly. Yes. The voice spoke again. We observed your response to breach events. Clara felt cold. Observed. Yes. The screens shifted. Footage appeared. Ridgewood. Sector 12. The containment response. The Midnight Express absorbing distortions. The voice continued. You maintain singular control. Clara's mind raced. So you tried to create a second one? Yes. The screen displayed energy flow diagrams. Sector 4 had been generating synchronized signals not to destabilize, but to test compatibility. Clara realized something slowly. This wasn't sabotage. It was evaluation. Why? She asked aloud. The voice responded. To determine if distributed stabilization is viable. The conductor's expression tightened slightly. You are proposing a parallel network. Yes. Clara looked at the screens carefully. The origin node wasn't trying to tear reality apart. It was trying to see if reality could be supported by more than one stabilizer. The Midnight Express core pulsed faintly outside. It had already detected the origin system. The conductor turned toward Clara. Your assessment? She considered carefully. If two systems operate without coordination, they could conflict. Yes. But if they communicate? The voice interrupted gently. That is our objective. Silence filled the room. Clara understood now. Sector 4 wasn't a weapon. It was research, an attempt to build redundancy. The Midnight Express had always operated alone. Single car containment. But if something ever exceeded its capacity, backup would be necessary. The conductor spoke slowly. Your system mirrors ours. Yes. But without integration. Yes. Clara stepped closer to the main screen. How do you intend to synchronize? The screens changed again. A bridge appeared between nodes. Not physical. Data-based. Shared resonance. The voice spoke calmly. Mutual signal exchange. Clara's heart beat steadily. That would require core approval. Yes. The conductor turned toward her. His eyes were steady. You are authorized observer. She swallowed. And? You may interface. Her breath caught. Yes. Clara felt the weight of the moment. If she initiated connection, the Midnight Express would temporarily link with Origin node. Two systems. One coordination layer. She looked at the conductor. Will this destabilize anything? He considered carefully. Not if parameters remain controlled. The voice added softly. Containment priority will not be overridden. Clara exhaled slowly. She realized something important. The Midnight Express wasn't threatened by competition. It was designed to prevent uncontrolled duplication. But if redundancy could improve stability, it should be possible. She stepped toward the interface terminal, placed her hand on it. The core sphere outside the building pulsed in response. The Midnight Express sensors activated. The conductor nodded. Begin handshake protocol. The screens displayed synchronization data. The spiral patterns aligned gradually. Not inverted. Not conflicting. Matching. Clara felt a faint vibration in her chest. Not fear. Alignment. The voice from Sector 4 spoke one final time. Signal compatibility confirmed. The conductor replied calmly. Integration parameters accepted. The screens displayed a new map. 2 systems. Linked. Midnight Express core. Origin node. Connected by controlled data bridge. Clara removed her hand slowly. The energy spike in the building stabilized instantly. Outside, the Midnight Express core sphere glowed brighter. Then steadied. No overload. No conflict. Harmony. The conductor looked at her. Assessment complete. Clara smiled faintly. It worked. Yes. The voice from the speakers concluded gently. Distributed stabilization active. The screens powered down to standby mode. Sector 4's signal vanished. No more breach pattern. No more synchronization anomalies. The Midnight Express had not been replaced. It had been enhanced. Clara walked back outside with the conductor. The train waited quietly, ready to depart. She looked at it with new understanding. It wasn't just a vehicle. It was infrastructure. And now, it had a partner system. The conductor stepped onto the platform. You have contributed to expansion without destabilization. Clara nodded. Redundancy is safety. Yes. The doors closed. The Midnight Express began moving again. Sector 4 was stable. The network map displayed on the train's internal screens now showed 2 primary nodes connected by a secure bridge. Clara watched as the train departed into the night. This time, there was no emergency. No breach. Just evolution. She stood alone on the platform once more. But now, when the departure board flickered, it displayed something new. Network status, distributed. Below it. Stability index, improved. Clara exhaled slowly. The system had adapted again. And this time, it had chosen cooperation. For the first time since Sector 4, the Midnight Express did not arrive alone. Clara noticed it at 11:41 p.m. The station lights flickered once, not in alarm, but in pattern. Then twice. Then a third time. She looked up at the departure board. Instead of 1 line, there were 2. Midnight Express, core route. Midnight Express, auxiliary link. Clara's heartbeat slowed. The distributed system was active. Hale stepped out of the control office, staring at the board. This wasn't scheduled, he said quietly. Clara nodded. It's the new bridge. As if summoned by the conversation, the Midnight Express rolled into Platform 4. But something was different. The train looked identical. Same exterior. Same windows. Same conductor. But behind it, a second carriage line shimmered faintly in the air. Not physically attached, but connected through light. The auxiliary link. Clara walked closer. The conductor stepped off as usual. But this time, another figure stood beside him. A second operator. Identical uniform. Different insignia on the chest. A mirrored circle. Origin node symbol. Clara blinked. You're synchronized. The second operator nodded. Yes. Hale approached cautiously. This wasn't in the original design. The conductor replied calmly. It is an adaptive expansion. Clara felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The system had grown. But growth meant complexity. And complexity meant risk. She stepped closer to the core sphere visible inside the train. Its glow was steady. Stronger than before. Balanced. The auxiliary node's energy was feeding in controlled amounts. Harmonized. Hale examined the data on his tablet. Stability index is higher than baseline. Clara smiled faintly. It worked. For now, Hale said. Clara frowned. What do you mean? He turned the tablet toward her. A new alert had appeared. Not from the Midnight Express network. From outside it. An unknown signal. Clara felt her stomach tighten. The system display showed a faint anomaly emerging far beyond monitored sectors. Not spiraling. Not structured. Random. The conductor noticed immediately. External disturbance detected. Clara looked up sharply. Is it another replication attempt? The auxiliary operator checked the data. No matching signature. Hale's face darkened. Then what is it? The Midnight Express core pulsed once. The auxiliary link responded. Together, the two systems analyzed the signal. Clara stepped closer to the train interface. The signal wasn't targeting instability zones. It wasn't probing containment. It was broadcasting. Repeating. At irregular intervals. She recognized the pattern instantly. 3 pulses. Pause. 3 pulses. Her breath caught. That rhythm, she whispered. The conductor turned toward her. You have encountered it before. Yes. The signal strengthened slightly. The auxiliary operator spoke. It is not aligned with current sectors. Hale scanned coordinates. It's coming from offshore. Clara's heart pounded. From the lake region. Hale checked. No. He paused. It's beyond territorial mapping. The conductor's expression remained calm. This may indicate new instability formation. Clara felt tension rising, but something about it felt different. The rhythm wasn't chaotic. It was structured, intentional. She closed her eyes briefly and focused. The signal was trying to synchronize, not destabilize. It was attempting handshake. Clara opened her eyes suddenly. It's not a breach, she said. Everyone looked at her. It's another system. Silence. Hale frowned. That's impossible. Clara shook her head. No. It's the same architecture. The Midnight Express core pulsed slightly brighter. The auxiliary link displayed resonance alignment data. The new signal was matching the train's frequency pattern. The conductor studied the readout carefully. It is requesting compatibility. Clara's mind raced. Another system. Not hostile. Not unauthorized. But independent. Just like Origin Node had been before integration. She looked at Hale. If we ignore it. He answered honestly. We risk misclassification. The conductor added. If it is a stabilizer, non-response could create conflict. Clara nodded slowly. Then we respond. The Midnight Express doors opened. This time, Clara boarded immediately. The auxiliary operator joined her. The train began moving toward the new signal's coordinates. Not through white void. Not through instability corridors. Through standard geography. But with elevated system awareness. As they traveled, Clara monitored the signal. It grew clearer. Stronger. And then, on the horizon, over the ocean, a faint circular glow appeared in the sky. Clara's breath slowed. It wasn't a spiral. It was a ring. Perfectly smooth. Rotating gently. The conductor stood beside her. This pattern is not identical. No, Clara agreed. But it's related. The ring expanded slightly. Not violently, but deliberately. The auxiliary operator analyzed data. It is not emitting instability waves. Hale's voice came through the system link. What is it emitting? Clara studied the readings carefully, then realized something astonishing. It's emitting stability. The train slowed as it approached the coastal zone. The ring in the sky hovered calmly. No distortion. No energy spikes. Just presence. The conductor spoke quietly. It is a passive node. Clara nodded. Like Origin. Yes. The Midnight Express core pulsed in recognition. The ring responded with matching frequency. Clara felt it. The resonance was mutual. No competition. No tension. The auxiliary link displayed green alignment. She exhaled slowly. This isn't another containment system. Hale asked, then what is it? Clara stared at the ring. I think it's a regional stabilizer. The conductor considered that carefully. Independent. Yes. The ring emitted a soft pulse. The Midnight Express responded in kind. For a moment, both systems aligned perfectly. Clara felt a strange calm. Two stabilizers. Not competing. Coordinating. The auxiliary operator turned to the conductor. Shall we initiate handshake? The conductor looked at Clara. She nodded. Yes. The Midnight Express extended a low-level signal. The ring responded immediately. Data flowed between systems. No override. No hierarchy. Just exchange. Clara watched as the global map updated. 3 nodes now visible. Midnight Express core. Origin node. Coastal ring system. Connected by controlled bridges. Distributed stabilization network. Hale's voice sounded impressed. Stability metrics have never been this high. Clara smiled softly. The system wasn't growing uncontrollably. It was forming alliances. The train slowed to a stop beneath the ring. The conductor spoke calmly. Compatibility confirmed. The ring above shimmered gently, then stabilized fully. No breach. No anomaly. Just expanded cooperation. Clara stepped off the train onto the coastal platform. She looked up at the ring. For the first time, she saw not containment, but collaboration. The Midnight Express had evolved from singular guardian into networked infrastructure, and she had helped make it possible. The conductor approached her one last time before departure. You have influenced system architecture beyond initial parameters. She nodded. Is that a problem? He paused. No. A faint smile. It is progress. The train doors closed. The Midnight Express departed once more. Not to fight, not to absorb, but to coordinate. Clara stood at the shoreline watching the ring in the sky rotate peacefully. The departure board on the coastal station updated. Global Stability Index optimized. She felt something new. Not responsibility. Not fear. Not awe. Balance. The Midnight Express wasn't alone anymore. And neither was she. For the next 2 weeks, the network held. Midnight Express Core. Origin Node. Coastal Ring System. 3 stabilizers. 1 distributed framework. Clara's life settled into a strange rhythm. She wasn't a passenger anymore. She wasn't full-time staff. She was something in between. Observer status, now upgraded to Guardian adjacent. Her role was simple. Monitor anomalies. Authorize cross-system responses. Prevent conflict between nodes. And so far, there had been none. No spirals. No breaches. No emergency routes. The Midnight Express ran on schedule. Sector scans returned clean. Even Hale seemed cautiously optimistic. We've reached the highest stability index in recorded history, he told her one evening. Clara nodded. That usually means something is working. Hale studied her. Or that something is waiting. She didn't respond immediately, because deep down, she felt it too. It began subtly, a delay in signal synchronization. Not failure, just hesitation. Clara noticed it during a routine system review. The origin node's data pulses were arriving milliseconds later than expected. She frowned, checked the logs. No errors, no interruptions, just slight timing drift. She contacted the auxiliary operator aboard the Midnight Express. Are you seeing latency? She asked. Yes, came the calm reply. Is it affecting stability? Negative. Within tolerance. Clara leaned back in her chair. Still, something about it bothered her. She pulled up the coastal ring system. Its pulses were also slightly offset. Not delayed in the same way, but not perfectly aligned either. 3 systems, all stable, but no longer perfectly synchronized. She walked to Hale's office. He was already studying the same discrepancy. This is new, he said quietly. Yes. He adjusted the display. The drift pattern formed a triangle, each node slightly out of phase with the others. Clara stared at it. It's not random. Hale nodded slowly. It's systemic. She felt a cold realization forming. What if synchronization was temporary? He met her eyes. Explain. She pointed to the diagram. When we linked the systems, they aligned. But now they are adjusting independently. Hale considered that. That would suggest autonomy. Yes. Silence filled the room. Autonomy in stabilizers could be healthy, but it could also introduce divergence. Clara studied the phase offsets carefully. They weren't growing. They were settling. Each system was calibrating its own internal rhythm. Not in opposition. Just independently. She exhaled slowly. They are learning. Hale raised an eyebrow. Learning what? Balance doesn't require identical timing. He nodded slowly. That could be correct. That night, something unexpected happened. Not a breach. Not a signal. A meeting request. Clara noticed it first on her secured terminal. A message routed through all 3 systems simultaneously. Origin node. Midnight Express Core. Coastal Ring System. The message was simple. Consensus review requested. Clara's heart rate increased slightly. She opened the details. A proposal had been drafted across all nodes. Not by one system, but collectively. The systems were requesting governance parameters adjustment. She blinked. They want oversight protocol updates. Hale leaned closer. That's not unusual. Yes, Clara agreed. But this isn't just maintenance. She scrolled further. The systems were proposing a shared coordination layer, a neutral interface, designed to manage cross-node communication. Hale's eyes widened slightly. They're requesting a council. Clara nodded. A governance bridge. The Midnight Express core had evolved from singular stabilizer to distributed partner. Now it was proposing structured collaboration. Not dominance. Not control. Shared architecture. Clara felt a strange sense of pride. The system wasn't just reacting anymore. It was designing itself responsibly. She approved the review request. The following week, representatives from all three nodes met digitally within a secure environment. Clara facilitated the session. The conductor represented the Midnight Express core. The auxiliary operator represented Origin node. A new representative emerged from the coastal ring system, an interface avatar built for communication. Clara observed quietly. The discussion focused on energy distribution, signal thresholds, and emergency response hierarchy. There were disagreements. Minor. Over response timing and priority weighting. But no conflict. Each system proposed adjustments. Each compromise improved alignment. Clara realized something profound during the session. The Midnight Express had started as a single-line response mechanism. Now it was becoming infrastructure. Not reactive. Preventative. The systems agreed on the new coordination layer. It would not centralize power. It would distribute awareness. Clara approved the final protocol. The systems updated simultaneously. The phase drift corrected itself. Not to identical timing, but to compatible timing. Balanced. The stability index rose again. Higher than before. Hale exhaled slowly. This is unprecedented. Clara smiled faintly. It's cooperation. 2 nights later, Clara stood alone on platform 4. The Midnight Express arrived quietly. No emergency lights. No alerts. Just routine transit. She boarded briefly. The conductor approached her. You authorized governance expansion, he said. Yes. He studied her calmly. Risk level. She thought carefully before answering. Minimal. He nodded once. Assessment aligns. Clara leaned against the rail. Are you satisfied with the changes? The conductor considered that. Satisfaction is not a system metric. She smiled slightly. Fair. He looked toward the core sphere. However, operational efficiency has improved. That's good. He paused. Your involvement reduced long-term instability probability by 37%. Clara blinked. That precise? Yes. She laughed softly. I'll take that as a compliment. The conductor allowed a faint smile. It is. As the Midnight Express departed that night, Clara watched it with steady confidence. 3 stabilizers. 1 coordination layer. Distributed balance. No singular dependency. No competing cause. The system had evolved beyond containment. It had become adaptive infrastructure. Clara walked home under clear skies. For the first time in weeks, she felt no background tension. No monitoring alerts. No drift warnings. Just quiet stability. The final change didn't arrive as an alarm. It arrived as a question. At 2:04 a.m., every system screen across the network displayed the same message. Expansion threshold reached. Clara sat upright instantly. Hale was already in the monitoring room. The Midnight Express core. Origin node. Coastal ring system. All 3 were stable. So what had triggered the alert? Clara scanned the data. The systems weren't destabilizing. They were preparing. Her pulse slowed. Preparing for what? The conductor's voice came through the secure channel. Network capacity approaching upper bound. Clara frowned. Upper bound. The auxiliary operator responded calmly. Current architecture supports 3 primary nodes. Hale looked at Clara. They are saying the network is full. Clara's mind moved quickly. The system had evolved from single-core containment to distributed stabilization. But it was still structured around a trinode framework. Now it was reaching its limits. She checked global anomaly feeds. For weeks, instability levels had dropped dramatically, but something new appeared in the data. Not spirals, not rings, not coordinated signals. Instead, a faint, widespread fluctuation, low intensity, global. Clara leaned closer. These aren't breaches, she murmured. Hale examined the map. No, they are background shifts. The conductor confirmed through the system. Environmental variance increasing. Clara felt a realization forming. The Midnight Express and its partner systems had stabilized localized fractures. But the world itself was slowly changing. Not collapsing, not breaking, evolving, and the network was detecting it. The three-node structure had been designed for containment. Now it needed to adapt again. Clara stood. What if expansion isn't about more control? Hale looked at her. Explain. What if it's about observation? The conductor's response was immediate. Clarify intent. Clara stepped toward the main display. We don't need more stabilizers. She gestured to the global map. We need distributed awareness. Hale raised an eyebrow. Beyond three nodes. Yes. She turned to the screen showing the current architecture. Instead of adding another core, we create open interfaces. The auxiliary operator spoke thoughtfully. Modular integration. Clara nodded. Exactly. The Midnight Express core pulsed softly. Not in alarm. In consideration. The conductor spoke after a brief pause. Proposal acknowledged. Clara's heart beat steadily. What does that mean? The auxiliary operator answered. It means the system is evaluating structural transformation. Hale looked impressed. They are not rejecting expansion. Clara smiled faintly. They're redesigning it. Over the next 48 hours, the three systems initiated a coordinated upgrade protocol. Not to add another core, but to shift from trinode architecture to distributed mesh awareness. Clara facilitated every step. The Midnight Express core remained primary stabilizer. Origin node maintained evaluation capacity. The coastal ring system continued regional balance. But now, they were interconnected through open, adaptive channels. No rigid hierarchy. No dependency loops. Instead, dynamic cooperation. Clara watched the live simulation of the new design. It resembled a web. Interlinked circles. Not centralized. Balanced. She felt something unexpected. Not pride. Not authority. Alignment. The network wasn't growing outward anymore. It was becoming resilient inward. Hale stood beside her. You realize this changes everything. She nodded. Yes. No single point of failure. Exactly. The conductor's voice echoed softly through the system. Distributed resilience achieved. Clara exhaled slowly. For the first time since Ridgewood, she felt completely certain the system would hold. Not because it was powerful, but because it was cooperative. At 11:59 p.m. that night, the Midnight Express arrived on Platform 4. Routine. No emergency. Clara boarded briefly to observe the updated core display. The sphere glowed steadily, now linked to a wider network. The conductor approached her. Network transformation complete. Yes, she said. He looked at her calmly. What is your assessment? She considered carefully. The system is no longer just containment. He nodded. It is infrastructure. Yes. She stepped toward the window. Outside, the station looked ordinary. People moved about unaware. No spirals. No distortions. No emergency alerts. Just transit. Clara turned back to the conductor. Will there ever be another breach? He responded honestly. Yes. She nodded. But now the system can adapt. Yes. She smiled softly. That's all we can ask. The train doors prepared to close. Before they did, the conductor spoke one final time. Your involvement was not required. Clara met his gaze. I know. But it was beneficial. She smiled. I'll take that. The doors closed. The Midnight Express departed into the night once more. Not alone. Not singular. Part of a wider mesh of stability. Clara remained on the platform, watching. The departure board displayed. Network status, distributed. Below it. Resilience index, maximum. She looked up at the night sky. No rings. No spirals. No fractures. Just stars. For the first time since this began. The system didn't feel like it was holding something back. It felt like it was moving forward. Balanced. Adaptive. Alive in a quiet way. Clara walked home slowly under calm skies. The Midnight Express continued its endless route. 3 systems, now many potential nodes, ready to grow when needed, ready to stabilize when required, but no longer dependent on singular structure. And somewhere far beyond tracks and sectors, reality remained intact, not because it was forced to stay that way, but because it was supported. Clara paused briefly at the bridge overlooking the river. The water flowed steadily beneath her. No distortions, no whispers, just movement. She smiled to herself. The last train at midnight had not been about departure. It had been about connection. And now, the system wasn't just guarding the world. It was part of it,